It's a warm-up act before the real experts come on. So, hi, Angie. Oriental Daily in the house. Okay, so obviously you guys know this is our third in a series of 5 master classes, and it's on tourism recovery. This is really a popular one. So many of you are going to come in, and there's more coming in, frankly. So let me just start. A small introduction on Keynote. Keynote Academy is part of the Malaysia Keynote group. I am Danny Yong, company. Is basically involved with training. Yeah. So lately, the past 2 years, we've been really involved with investigative journalism. So and also we've been helping funders administer small grants for story projects. And now we are also working on ASEAN, helping to our journalists in ASEAN to collaborate a little bit more. And this is our second project. Well, another project is with PCIJ. They are the initiator of that project, together with Tempo, the 3-way collaboration on the reporting on COVID-19 financing across ASEAN. And this is the next one. So a little bit about our sponsors. IWPR, International Institute for War and Peace Reporting. They are the people who are kind enough to sponsor this series of masterclasses as well as the story grants. So they're based out of Manila. So Carmela's friends are, plenty of their friends are there. And I'm sure Kristin knows them as well. Filipinos are really quite friendly, aren't they? You guys network really well. That's what I know. So so as I mentioned, this particular project is really to encourage more collaboration among reporters in ASEAN. Yeah, and the project is called SEAFORE, so Southeast Asia Forum for Reporting. So the idea is really to get reporters in one room and one virtual room at least to at least bask in each other's presence and hopefully reach out to each other across different countries to maybe pursue story projects and such. So with this being the aim, there are 2 overlaps here that we are working on, i.e. we are putting journalists together who are working on the same desks. So basically most of you reporting on the same, roughly the same area. Therefore, you know, meeting each other is a little bit more, even more relevant. Yeah, and the second thing is we tie it together with the topic. So ASEAN topic kind of concerns all of us, and you know, some are more relevant for others, you know, but I think in terms of tourism, it affects everybody. So these are 2 overlaps that we're using to help you guys get network a little bit better, right? And hopefully sustain this collaboration as we move ahead. So there are 3 major components. Yeah, the masterclass itself. So the masterclass itself, we have 5, as I mentioned earlier, and the idea is we provide enough content for you guys to, number 1, get yourself up to speed in that topic, in the subject matter, number 1, and number 2, if those who are interested in writing on that particular topic, like today, tourism recovery, you totally have the sources that you can totally ask many questions, and from the masterclass itself, you can write your articles. That's number 2. And now then also the reporting project. So each one of our partners we are working with will work on a longer story project, and that will be co-published across all publishers that is partnering in SEAFORE. And of course, the forum, we want more people to chat. We actually do have a WhatsApp group for the journalists who attended our master classes, and this is the other effort to kind of get you guys to you know of each other, at least know of each other. So we'll keep that WhatsApp group current, and we add more people to that as we go along. And I know you may not have an occasion to say hi to somebody tomorrow or next week, but 3 months later, 6 months later, when you want to write something and then say, hey, I want to get a guy in Timor-Leste, then where's my, oh, yeah, then it will be there in the WhatsApp group for you to do. All right. So today's masterclass, we've got the speakers. I will let Kristin later. I don't know why her picture is not appearing. You will do a slow reveal on Kristin in a while. So we have 4, and you can see we got Zakaria from Ministry of Tourism in Malaysia. Eddy is president of ASEAN, and Thraenhart. He's the expert in Mekong area because he's with the destination Mekong, and he's got really, all of these guys got really valuable insights, right? And Kristin is going to help us facilitate the session, all right? And she will give you a more in-depth introduction to everybody as the masterclass proceeds. All right. Oh, there she is. So yes, I think a little bit of housekeeping. Keep your mics on mute. Do ask questions. If possible, leave your video on. And I think some of you can know already that we are recording this session. So that means we will have the recording available for others who want to view it, or even if you want to view it yourself, in case you miss a portion of it. We're also working on the transcripts, and that will be made available to whoever who wants it. You can just easily send us an email or send us a text. And so try to hope you can indicate where you're from and your name, of course, in your Zoom profile name. So if you look at my Zoom profile name is Danny Yong and then Kiniacademy. So it gives us an idea where you're from. And if you ask questions, then that will also be quite helpful. So in terms of questions, do put them up in the chat box or text it to the journalist group that we set up. Do indicate if you are addressing a particular or directing the question to any particular speaker. Number 1. Number 2, indicate where you're from and who you are. And it's simple as that, right? We will go through your question. Sometimes we depend on Kristin at the end of the speaker session, or the end of in the Q&A session 1-2 hours from now. So before we started, we took a poll, which some of you are kindly filled up. We asked some questions, and we asked journalists to tell us if they cover tourism and travel reporting in connection with COVID-19. So obviously, everybody said sometimes, yeah, but it's a big industry that's affected everybody, and of course, COVID-19 has spared no one. And how familiar are you with the latest research regarding safe practices in connection with COVID-19? So it's only kind of in the middle. We'll have our experts to come and shine some light on research and such. Has your country's government made efforts to implement safe workplace practices for tourism workers? So it's kind of split in the middle. I guess, Kristin, you will be paying attention to this and provide some answers where in some of these areas. Right. In your opinion, what is the biggest issue that tourism businesses should focus on in your country? Everybody say must be about the safety of tourists and visitors. Well, I mean 5 out of 6. I mean not everybody, and health and safety of staff and employment and income comes next. To what degree does your country collaborate with other Southeast Asian countries to facilitate safe tourism recovery? And we kind of in the middle here. On the fence. I think most countries are more concerned about their own opening of their own country first before they talk about opening their borders. Even though now there's some talk about loosening, Singapore-Malaysia bubble, and not Singapore-Malaysia bubble, Singapore-Malaysia travel restrictions be lifted. So I hope I've taken up not too much time. The idea is to have everybody else come in before we start. And let me do a quick introduction of Kristin. Yeah, Kristin obviously is from Manila. She's a freelance editor from the Philippines, and she's got over a decade in writing experience. So she spends a lot of time on this particular topic, and she's going to help us pull the whole session together and keep it current. So I hand it over to you, Kristin. Kristin?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you.
So let me let you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Danny, and good day to everyone. I am humbled and honored to be part of this masterclass. And before I go to my talk, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who made this possible. IWPR, SEAFORE, and Kiniacademy. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak in front of my fellow journalists. Today, I will provide the context on the state of travel as well as travel recovery in Southeast Asia. Then later, we will be hearing from industry experts to give us a laser-focused view on their specific topics. Thus, I encourage everyone to post any questions you may have, and we will entertain a few of them at the end of each session, as well as on a separate Q&A portion we have at the end. I hope that by the end of this masterclass, we will have a deeper understanding on travel and tourism in post-COVID-19. Okay, I would like to start my session by showing you these photos of a typical day in Bali International Airport or Ngurah Rai Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in Southeast Asia. Feels nostalgic, isn't it? When was the last time you have been in an airport going on a holiday? I've been in Bali 3 times in 2019, just before the pandemic, and I really cannot get used to how busy the airport is. Probably who here have been to Bali, and how long did it take you to get to this area where people, probably from your hotel, holding up a sign with your name on it? It takes me 30 to 45 minutes just to get through the arrivals, which is quite a while, especially compared to Singapore, where you can breeze in through the check-ins. Bali is always bustling with people. Tourists from all over the world fly to Bali to experience the unique culture, ride the waves, or just be one with nature. And if I knew that that would be the last time that I will be in Bali for a while, I should probably have spent a few more days, even if it cost me a month's salary. So of course, Bali, or the island of the gods, is a prime destination in Southeast Asia. In 2019, Bali welcomed 6.3 million foreign tourists, just the island itself. I remember attending travel conferences 2 years ago, and the biggest topic on our industry at that time was over tourism. There's just so many tourists. Travel executives are butting heads on how to mitigate its impacts and on destinations and environment. Then, as if some god provided an immediate solution, like Thanos snapping his fingers, COVID-19 happened. The COVID-19 pandemic is a never-before-seen crisis that crippled the travel industry. It grounded planes, closed hotel doors, shut down borders, and left many prime Southeast Asian destinations deserted of tourists. And until now, most countries in the region are still closed for international tourism. Bali never saw their projected 7 million tourists in 2020. Their foreign arrivals dropped by a staggering 83%. And Bali is not alone in this situation. Many destinations in Southeast Asia that depended on tourism, like Phuket, Boracay, Palawan, Langkawi, and Phuket, were like ghost towns when tourists stopped coming. First, let's look at this graph right here from World Travel and Tourism Council, or WTTC. We can see the growth of tourism in Southeast Asia in the last 10 years, or the glory days of tourism. As you can see, the contribution of travel and tourism to the GDP in Southeast Asia grew steadily. That is why the whole industry was super high with their projections for 2020. I also simplified a table here from WTTC to show the contribution of tourism to the GDP as well as employment in every Southeast Asian country. But this data is from WTTC, which you can easily download from their website. Okay, so back to what I'm saying about 2020. As we all know, COVID derailed all plans, devoid all hope for tourism that year. Now, after more than a year with borders shut, many ASEAN countries are adamant to reopen, although there is still some risk in doing so. Why? Two things. Travel and tourism contribute greatly to nation's revenue or gross domestic product, meaning it brings money. And number two, it supported millions of jobs. Tourism is a lucrative billion-dollar industry in Southeast Asia. And we are not talking about a measly 1 or 2 billion here. In 2019, tourism contributed 393 billion US dollars to the total GDP in the region, which is equivalent to 12.1%. And the industry supports 42.3 million jobs. It is important to note that many destinations like small provinces in Southeast Asia are so dependent on tourism that it is their major industry supporting the people's livelihood. And shutting down tourism is like turning off the valve of one of the vital sources of revenue for many Southeast Asian destinations and leaving millions of people unemployed. Unfortunately, domestic travelers alone will not be able to bring the same amount of revenue that international tourism brings before the pandemic because for the past 10 years, prices of tourism products have adapted on the deep pockets of foreign tourists. I remember the tricycle fair in Boracay when I went there in 2018, when it reopened after being closed for 6 months, cost 125 pesos or $3. I mean, foreign tourists will not bat an eyelid for that, but that is way too high of the standard fare. Also, our photographer in Travel Daily is a Thai, and he said that Phuket is too expensive for locals, that they would rather go somewhere else. That is why countries are keen to reopen their borders to international travelers who have a higher purchasing power. However, this is easier said than done as several factors are at play so destinations can reopen safely. But because just in case you don't know, travel and tourism is a complex, interlinked industry. Okay, so let's all try to analyze those factors. The major concern with countries reopening is incoming tourists, especially those from places with high cases, may spike the local COVID-19 cases, and it may overwhelm the already burdened healthcare systems of countries. COVID-19 continues to evolve, and new and more contagious variants like the Delta variant from overseas enter through our borders. Think about this. Can you imagine how many people you meet, interact with, travel with, or simply pass by whenever you travel? Probably in the thousands, isn't it? There are thousands of opportunities for the virus to spread. Yeah, we know vaccination is key, and nations are working hard to ramp up their vaccination rate so they can go back to normal, whatever that means, soon. Thailand took a different approach. It prioritizes vaccination in Phuket with the help of businesses there so they can reopen. With Indonesia is also doing the same thing in Bali. But there is a challenge when it comes to procuring supplies since vaccine supplies is limited and everyone wants to get their hands on them. Meanwhile, millions of jobs, of tourism-related jobs, hang on the other side of the balance. And we are not only talking about airlines and their flight crews, big hotels and their staff. We also mean jobs in restaurants, transportation, spas, and stores that are all catering to tourists. Because without tourism, millions of people will have to find a new source of income. In Bali, I know I keep giving examples about Bali. Furloughed workers went back to farming and fishing, and they are earning much less than before. I also want to, there is another factor that I want to talk about, which is the perspective of a traveler, which we are all. It seems that travel has become more expensive and much of a hassle, isn't it? We can no longer just get up and go wherever or whenever we want. We see additional costs introduced for several COVID testings, for deposit fees, getting medical insurance, and stay in hotels for quarantine for several days. I understand that this is all for us, for our safety and to prevent the spread of the virus. However, this may be too much for a common traveler. But where are we right now? After 15 months, we've been in a pandemic for more than a year now. I am doing travel reporting myself, and I am seeing hope, signs of hope in the travel industry. And I would say that now we are now on the path of recovery. We have seen our Western counterparts with higher vaccinations enabling people to travel freely in green countries or countries with low infection rate. Also, they are now able to hold major events in person, like the recent film festivals, VMAs, the Met Gala. In Southeast Asia, we are also seeing progress, like Singapore is slowly reopening for business travel as it is the business hub in the region, as well as the gateway to Asia. They established green lanes with certain countries. Also, Singapore decided to live with COVID in the near future, treating it like a common flu. Malaysia piloted the travel bubble to Langkawi for fully vaccinated local travelers and is planning to reopen more destinations soon, which I am excited to learn more about later from one of our speakers. Thailand launched the Phuket Sandbox program in July, followed by Koh Samui Plus, allowing fully vaccinated tourists to travel without quarantine. Now, Thailand is planning the reopening of Bangkok and Hua Hin for fully vaxxed travelers later this year. These are all signs of travel coming back. Actually, I love hunting and writing this kind of stories. I call them my olive leaf stories, stories that give hope to the members of the industry who probably have COVID fatigue by now from all of the depressing news about travel. Full travel recovery may take some time, but I am positive that we'll get there. So I just want to bring this session back to the audience. So what is the role of media in travel recovery? Well, our role in this is not to be ignored. We are the messenger of news, essentially. We inform the public of the latest COVID updates and the travel restrictions on where they can and cannot travel, the protocols that they must heed to. Your story could be that one push a person need to book that flight. We also ask head of governments and policymakers whether what they are doing is enough, by showing them the grievances of overworked healthcare workers and the plight of the hand-to-mouth tourism workers. Your article or your content may have the ability to overturn decisions and policies for the better. We may disagree on many things, but I think there is one thing that we can all agree. That is, everyone wants this whole pandemic to be over so we can all travel and experience what a busy airport feels like again. Thank you so much. We have a bit of time, so I'm going to read some of your questions. Okay. Okay, there's Actually, let me see. Some Asian countries, many Asian countries like Vietnam or Thailand were praised for how they handled the pandemic, maintaining the COVID-19 cases low. But now, even these Asian countries is having, there is a rise on their cases, and Vietnam is still in lockdown. I would like to ask, our speakers, maybe they can give an intervention. Why did the system stop working? Zakaria, are you, sorry, Zakaria, are you here? Are you there?
No, I'm just testing the system. Sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
so I just want you to ask, why did the system stop working? Why do you think there is a sudden rise on COVID cases in Asian countries like Vietnam or Thailand? Last year we were doing so well.
Oh, you asking me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I think it's all because of when we start to move around, these things start to accumulate, and it's all about movement. I mean, in the early stage, it's all about movement. The more we stay at home, the less it's going to to spread. But the more you move, the more it happens. It's just like in Malaysia when we start moving and we start opening up places, and if new cases happen. So I think this is just the few things. For early stage, we need to stay at home. That was the advice.
But now we need to.
We cannot just stay at home all the time. We need to move. Yeah.
Yeah. Jens, you are based in Thailand. So there is a sudden rise in Thailand, but Phuket is still open. Why do you think that they did not close Phuket, or even though a lot of places in Thailand are in the red?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think, and I'm not in Phuket, so I can't really evaluate the situation. But what I'm reading, and I think we're reading all the same thing, is that on one hand, the government is looking to balance economic development, obviously keeping businesses afloat, and managing the pandemic. So I think they're taking a little bit of risk. Cases are going up. But if it can be managed from a health standpoint, and even though, I mean, obviously hospitals are filling up, at least what I'm reading, I think it's still manageable. And this is also, I think, why the Phuket sandbox is being expanded into other destinations like Samui. You mentioned Phuket as well, Hua Hin. So I think, I mean, it's I have to applaud the Thai government for taking a more, courageous approach with that, because obviously we know other countries, that take a very conservative approach. If we look at New Zealand or Australia, but where obviously tourism is a big part of of GDP, and Thailand is a big example, and where domestic tourism is just not enough to compensate. So I think sometimes the government needs to take more courageous steps for that. So I think that's why. But I agree with Zakaria. I mean, obviously, yeah, when things open up, when people are moving around, then cases spread again. And also sometimes I think there's this notion of, if the government says, okay, it's okay to do this, then people get very quickly, they get relaxed. Right. So, I mean, I think we still, we see people then taking off their mask, or social distancing, is becoming kind of like something that's of the past, kind of like, well, you know what, if I'm allowed to go to Phuket on vacation, then I'm probably allowed to do what I would normally do there, So I think then obviously, cases can spread again.
Okay. Thank you, Jens. Well, some countries in the region, this is from Chanri Teara. I'm really sorry if I mess up your name. While
It's
some
okay, yeah.
countries, while some countries in the region prepare to open their border for vaccinated tourism later this year, what is your anticipation on this? How well prepared are they? Let's go back to Zakaria first. When you reopened Langkawi, do you think you are prepared just in case the COVID cases rise?
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, when we reopen Langkawi, there's a few things that we have to consider. First is, what if cases happens? How do we solve the problem? That has been notified, and we have come up with evacuation plans if it's necessary and things like that. But to make sure that we do right from the start, so we make sure that people are vaccinated and fully vaccinated. And then if their families, so we take care, we want to make sure number one is they're fully vaccinated. And then come the issue of, we do not want people to travel anywhere as you like, because you're only opening Langkawi. So we even trying to control that by making sure that they use travel agent services, so that travel agents will bring you from point to point. Or as you wanted to see your parents so much, you stop in Ipoh or another state or things like that along the way, and we do not want that. So ours is, we opening Langkawi just for you to come straight from wherever you are from, whether you fly or with a travel agency to Langkawi, and it works. The cases were very low, and people were adhering to it. And we also have tests where people are being tested, a swab test before coming. And these people, we make sure that they do not reach Langkawi until they are stabilized. So Alhamdulillah, everything was under control, and we're very happy of the result. Thank you.
Thank you, Zakaria. Also, I want to share with Phuket Sandbox, before they opened the Phuket Sandbox program, they made sure that all tourism workers are fully vaccinated. The general population target vaccination was 70%. That is one of the things that they prepared in order for them to reopen. Well, how about Jens? You've been in Mekong countries, I mean, the landlocked countries in Southeast Asia. How do you think we can prepare for reopening? What must be done?
Thank you, Kristin. I think, as you said before, I think, having obviously a high vaccination rate, compared to other parts of the world, Southeast Asia was lagging a little bit behind, especially Thailand, Vietnam, if you look at the percentages. But I think now it has accelerated again. So, I mean, I live in Thailand, and I've been now, I'm fully vaccinated. And just a few weeks ago, I didn't even have anything booked or no hope that I would ever get vaccinated. So it actually happened very quickly. So I think that's very good. So I think that's one part. The other part is obviously have health infrastructure in place to if something happens, that everything is there, and then also the health policies and guidelines and measurement that is then going down to the operational level of venues and properties, from hotels to restaurants, museums, attractions, and so on. And I think what's especially important is, and I think that sometimes it's not talked about enough, is communication. I mean, you are journalists, so I think you know the importance of. I would actually add consistent communication. I think that's one thing that sometimes happens where there's a lot of inconsistent messages out there. And I think the key in this time is to really restart travel again, is building trust and confidence. And obviously, if I'm looking to go to a destination, wherever it might be in the world, and I hear different messages, and also I don't know where to get a COVID test, and if I arrive, and then I read, well, one person has to do this, the other one has to do that, or this person can go straight to the beach, the other one can have to be locked up in a hotel room for 7 days. All these kind of things that come up. I think there needs to be consistent operation, there needs to be consistent measurements, and there needs to be consistent communication. One thing, and I'll talk about that when I do my presentation, is that actually we now, with our Mekong countries, in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank, we have created actually a Mekong Tourism Recovery Communications Plan. This actually is being communicated, is being published next month. So it's basically done. We're just doing the setting right now and the design, and then it's going to be published. So I think this will also be very interesting for journalists, because I think that's kind of defines the key messaging, the source markets, the channels, and how we're looking really to communicate what someone can expect in the region, and what someone cannot expect in the region.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with how communication is essential, especially between policymakers or the head of governments and the media. Especially that one of the challenges of the media is the volatile travel restrictions that can change instantly. Also, we have to battle with unverified sources and fake news over the internet. So yeah, I think that having that line of communication between governments and the media, so that all of the information that we publish are verified and from official sources, that would be great, so that we can aid travel recovery. Well, that's it for me. We will be hearing next from Mr. Zakaria Nani, Head of COVID-19 Special Unit of the Malaysia's Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, as he will explain the impacts on livelihood of tourism, businesses and workers, and I hope he will be giving us a scoop on the upcoming reopening of Malaysia. Mr. Zakaria.
Thank you, Miss Kristin from Philippines. I miss Philippines, yeah. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good afternoon to all of you friends from the ASEAN countries. Thank you very much for having us to share about the tourism industry, especially with how we want to open Langkawi and what happens after that. So to begin with, maybe let's see our first slide. Is it coming? Okay, mitigating the socio-economic impacts on livelihood of tourism businesses and workers. So okay, next please. Okay, this we would like to share with you today is about in solving that problem, how we do a domestic travel bubble. We just do domestic first because we believe that we just do a test and see how things go within the country, and not doing international yet, because we have to be very careful and we have to be knowledgeable about how to handle things when things go wrong and so on. That's why we choose Langkawi is a pilot project. Okay, next. Okay, how does this thing come about? As what Miss Kristin have shared and our friends, Mr. Jens also have shared, the tourism industry is a big impact. Is the most impacted industry when the COVID cases is starting into our country. Now, for example, if you look at in 2020, we have about a loss of about 135 billion. As that's not big enough. And 2021, we lost even more. It's about 165 billion. And the areas, of course, in the tourism areas, we have the travel and tour operators business, and the transportation, the airlines are crying. Some of the pilots are now selling mee curry or selling burgers, and then the cruise people, the taxi drivers, the bus, train, motorcycles. If you go to Malacca, you have the tricycle or trishaws, they are all impacted. And in the accommodation part, we have the hotel industry, the apartments, people who are in the homestays, chalets, vacation homes, resties are all affected. And suddenly they have no job, or suddenly their salary is cut down to half. And we look into the other segments on the excursion side. When people move around, they would like to go to museums, to the theme park, the zoos. There were some meetings, the retails, they want to buy things. For example, in Langkawi, they buy chocolates and everything. The culture and art centers, for everything was like suddenly on a standstill. As we are aware, tourism is about mobility. When you're not allowed to move, how can this thing move? So like the money doesn't move, the people doesn't move, and everybody is waiting for when is my next salary is going to be paid, because everything is on standstill. Okay, next please. Okay, I will look at this tourism contributors to the local livelihood. It provides jobs to about 3.6 million people in Malaysia. And in Malaysia, it's about 1 in every 4 jobs are in the tourism industry. So we look, for example, the amount, if we were to break down by citizens, 88% are Malaysians who are in the tourism industry. And we have about 9,000 tourist guides have got no jobs to do. There's no guide, there's no movement of people, no tourism, and guiding is not in demand. So they are like jobless, and that involve about 36,000 households. And in Langkawi alone, there was so much heavily on tourism. The loss of tourism expenditure was about 1 billion, with 60,000 industry players affected and facing loss of jobs. So if we were to look at the other components about the employment level, about 70% are the non-executive, which is the lower category. They are the one who are the most affected, because their families are big, they are the breadwinner of the family, and yet they are, like, you know, in a way jobless and things like that. And we look at this on the left side, this green thing. This is very interesting. I'm sure everyone is aware of this, but we just can we imagine in the tourism industry, the moment you are allowed, tourism is allowed to open, the cruise line business will open, the airline business, the motor coach, the rental car, the train is all about moving, travel. And as you move around, the banks will be alive again, the restaurants will be alive, and the meeting convention business, the shopping, the sport arenas, if you come because of sport tourism, recreation, the theme parks and things like that, and the fuel industry. You know, if you are for local domestic, for example, you have to fill in your gas and things like that. The theater industry, the entertainment, travel agents, accommodation, all will be lively if tourism is allowed to do. And rule number 1 is about mobility. And you look at the people, you will pay salary to the categories of people: the frontliner, the tourist guides, the police, the driver, the hotel maids, the cruise people in the cruise industry, the chef, the waitress, and even then, if you know nasi lemak, the nasi lemak vendors. You know, the moment you go out of your house, you'll be looking about things to buy, because as you are on vacation, you start to be happy that I want to spend, I want to buy. But if you're not allowed to move, this money is just kept in the house. Okay, and then we look more. When these people that I said will be able to service in the tourism industry, they will end up being able to pay for their daily expenses. For example, they want to pay for their phone bills, paying the banks, paying for shopping, for the school of the children, to pay for the real estate, the house, you know, the monthly payment for your house, and for your transportation, monthly payments, even for hospitals, even for your pets. You know, you want your cats to have vitamins, and all this all depends on money, food on the table, but you need to get a job. Okay, shall we move? And for this reason, we start thinking that, because of course we love our people, we want everyone to be alive. So we start telling them, stay at home, and make sure you are safe. And when you stay at home, there is no job, and how to get money. So we start thinking that we must slowly do it safely, because we want to do it right from the very beginning. So we start thinking of maybe we open up one destination that we believe is the safest to open. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, then we talk about, why not you open Langkawi? Why? Because we have some reasons why we believe this is the best destination to start with. First, it's a strategically positioned island resort. And in Langkawi, we have the best world-class facilities, from the average one for people like me, you know, to the rich and famous people. You have the 5-6-star hotel if you want it. Langkawi has it. And next is about, they have good itineraries that can be tailor-made, and we can to the places of interest that we have. There's so many attractions there. And also, it's the significant impact on the economy and the risk of controllable epidemic transmission. We believe we can control people coming in and out, because there's no way by road. It's only by ferry, it's only by flight. And we can really siphon every single person that comes in to the level that we want. So So for this reason, we say maybe we start with Langkawi, and some of the islands also start asking why not us, why Langkawi. So this is our reason. Let's start with one, and we see what happens. Okay, next please. Okay, when we say we want to start Langkawi, there are a few processes that takes place because you want to be very careful to make sure we do it right. So number one, we propose the reopening as agreed as an initiative under MOTEC, stands for Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, and so for a tourism rehabilitation plan. And then we start having an implementation framework, which was presented to the National Security Council, Pandemic Management Technical Working Committee. So we present to them, we want to do this, and we say that this is the SOPs that we have in mind. From the moment you leave your house to the moment you leave the island. It's a long thing. So meaning to say, you leave your house, and what happens when you take the plane, what happens when you arrive on the island, and what happens you go to the places. So you have to behave yourself, who are watching you, because we watch them because we like them, because you want to be sure that they are safe and they make the other people safe. So there's a lot of these rules and regulations. Enjoy yourself, but don't forget these new norms that everybody is to adhere to. So after we agreed on that, now it's talking about the pre-opening, the middle part. Yeah. So the pre-opening, we have engagement session with all the stakeholders, including the industry players, the product owners, business, and various ministries and agencies. We have because both us, we being the tourism COVID unit, we do it together with LADA, which is the person in charge of Langkawi. We sit together agency by agency. For example, today we are discussing with this logistics, the airlines and the ferry, what are do's and don'ts, what are the things that possibly could happen, is the size enough, is the space enough. Okay, don't worry about that. So so we have discussions about how to mobilize people correctly when they come into Langkawi, and we also have sessions with the hotel about are they ready to receive these tourists, and also with these travel agencies. And last but not least, we also have engagement session with the these duty-free shops. So these are among the 4 components that is important in opening of Langkawi. So after going through that, we have a preparation of the draft of the SOP, and we present it to the committee again, the working group committee on this pandemic, to say that we have got this SOP ready. We have discussed with the industry. Okay, so now how do we start? So the SOP as for Langkawi as a pilot project was submitted to be gazetted, and finally is gazetted under the Act of 342. So once we are ready with that, at that time we are supposed to open Langkawi on the 1st, but something not so good happens in Langkawi. So we discuss and we say maybe 16. Let Langkawi prepare themselves very well. So Alhamdulillah, on the 16th we start, and until now, Langkawi is having a good time receiving tourists day by day. Next place, please. Next page. Okay, so what happens after we open Langkawi? This is the good news we have. So we have this domestic travel bubble, it's kind of small report. So arrival by air, as per 16 to 22nd of September, we have more than 10,000 people coming into Langkawi. And by sea is about 5,000. So total is about more than 15,000 people between 16 to 22nd of September. And as you are aware, we do a screen, we make it compulsory for screening tests at the airport and the jetty. It's only 19 positive cases that were found before they depart. And of course, we advise them not to come to Langkawi. But we promise them something good. I will share with you later. For those who cannot come to Langkawi, they just don't have to cry, but they are being allowed to come when they are ready. And then we have also the screen again. So on the travel agencies, the booking were up by 70% for until end of the year. The shopping activities increased by 30%, and that was beginning. I think by now it should be more. And the occupancy rate will jump about 79% for 4, 5-star, 3-star, and so things are building up. So everything in this in Langkawi seems to be working well as planned. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is about when earlier we were saying anybody who is double vaccinated can just come to Langkawi. You're domestic. We are one family. You can come. But suddenly we realized that maybe we have to do some kinds of assessment at the airport and entry point. So for this reason, we say that from across the entire country you can come unless you are under the movement control order. But then you cannot come. And minimum stay in Langkawi is about there's no limit. You can stay for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year. It's up to you. So we are welcoming everyone, no minimum or maximum length of stay. Travel Langkawi and return to original destination requires a police permit through the services of travel. A travel agent will do for you, but you will need a police permit to prove that you are really going to Langkawi, because at this point of time, we do not want people to misuse this facility by going to visit their families, because visiting families is not allowed yet. There is a social category which we are still more careful now. And number 4 is those traveling by air, because you are confirmed going to fly to that point. So you don't need a police permit. You do not even need a licensed travel agent, because all these things is only to make sure that you go to Langkawi, not to other places. And last is for those who have to adjust to ferry. For example, you arrive at the terminal, the ferry is no more there, it finishes its service. So it makes sense for you to stay overnight in Kedah or Perlis, which is the nearest state for you to go to the jetty. Next, please. Okay, this is the travel bubble SOP. You must be fully vaccinated. For children under the age of 17 years old or below must be accompanied by a fully vaccinated parents. And then for all Malaysian citizens, because this is for domestic market, as you're aware, but we consider the foreigners of this category as domestic market, meaning to say the non-citizens of Malaysia include expatriate, Malaysia my second home, international students here, the healthcare, people who and the families, permanent residents are all considered as domestic markets, and they're allowed to go to Langkawi. Okay, next please. And then the type of holiday. So you can come for a day trip, you can stay overnight, and you can stay, as I said, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, all is allowed. And holiday with accommodation booking, pre-booking tickets, you must prove that. And holiday package booked with a licensed travel agency. Okay, you must, it's all about, you must prove that you're going to Langkawi. Because at this point, as I said earlier, we are not opening people to go to other places yet, but only for Langkawi. Next, please. Okay, the medium of transport, you can go by private vehicles, or you hire, you use travel agency services, but all this only for people, if you to use your own private vehicle only for the border to the jetty, which means the state of Kedah and Perlis. Other than that, you have to come, you go by a travel agency, and air by direct flights, air travel is allowed, sea travel is allowed, and passengers full capacity. This is not normal in other places, like we do not allow people to have to travel in full capacity at this point of time. But for Langkawi, everything goes. It's like you suddenly upgrade Langkawi into a phase 4 where everything is possible. Next, please. Okay, and then we have the test. The screening test. So screening can be done for those who want to come to Langkawi. Make it like you can have your test done in private health facilities, so that within 44 hours you come to the airport, just show that you have done your negative. You can just travel. The other one is you can also purchase a saliva test kit from any pharmacy or whatever, and bring it to the airport and do the testing there. The third one is you get the services of these people at the airport to prove that you are negative. So you want to make sure that before you drop your bag, you're proven negative. We cannot have you going on board, dropping your bag and suddenly you are not positive and you want to withdraw back your bags that have been checking. That will be very inconvenient for other people. So all this happens before you even drop your bag at the airport and at the ferry terminal. Next, please. Okay, introducing to our Malay language. Why we have this in Malay language? Because this is the original SOP which is in our website for this in our ministry and also in the national website. So actually, this is generally saying about the do's and don'ts and the procedures about going to Langkawi. But I just like to share with you on these general conditions. For example, you must be swabbed, test, and then negative. Insurance is not required, but you may if you want to, and the age is 17 below. Other than that, these are the checklists to make sure that you have proof of that you are double vaccinated in your MySejahtera, which is our national COVID information. You must have your identification. This is normal, and then you have the police letter and the agency, the travel agency information, your itinerary, the package that you buy, and proof that you're buying a hotel service in Langkawi. And then documents, any other documents, whenever you are asked by the police if you want to be on the road or things like that, you have to be prepared with this. Other than that, you are safe. You can just go to Langkawi happily. Next, please. This is the most important question that people want to know, like what can I do there in Langkawi? So this list tells you about the activities that you can do. Actually, it's almost everything. You look there, you can go into the hotel, you can go to the homestay, and then you can go swimming, to the gym, lounge, or for business events, you can go into a hall for to do something, events in the hall. And it's all about, when you say SOP for phase 4, it means like it is open for almost everything. So you can go to attractions like the beaches, swimming, snorkeling, diving, or fishing, or edutainment, recreation, extreme adventure, nature park, farms, aquariums, you name it, zoo, recreation, social activities, and also special interests like golfing, scuba diving, cycling, angling, yachting, and everything, and even eco adventure activities, bird watching, caving, mountain climbing. We have to specify, because in some phases these things are not allowed. But when it's phase 4, everything, but we tell them we suggest you can go whitewater rafting, hiking, jungle trekking, camping, or you watching cultural activities, going to the library to see a theater, to go to the museums, or academic visits to the geopark, and also spa, reflexology. You have your massage on the feet, and pedicure, manicure. So it's almost like life goes as usual. Okay, next please. Okay, this is the new thing. So the tourists who are positive during the screening at the airport, this is the good news I'll let you share with you. If they are found positive at the airport or at the jetty, they're not allowed to continue their journey, but are managed by the Ministry of Health Procedures. So they will be very sad, of course. So, but what we do to make them happy is, with the airports of Malaysia Association of Hotels, Malaysia Associations of Hotel Owners, MAHO, and MIBA, these are all hotel associations. They said that tourists are stranded due to failing health screening tests can postpone their visit to another date, subject to terms and conditions of bookings made through registered tourist accommodation premises. And also the airlines were very nice enough to say that you can, if related to flight cancellations, and you can have your refund claims or tickets subjected to the terms agreement. For example, but among the terms and conditions is like, if your ticket is during the special promotion, it's only 80 ringgit to Langkawi, but when you come there later on will be about 300 ringgit. So you just pay the difference of the 80. So the 80 is counted in. At least you don't lose your money. Okay, is that good? Good? No? No good? Okay. So the responsibility of licensed companies. So this actually, even if this is all a PR exercise, but even if they refuse to, we have an act. We call it the Tourism Industry Act 1992, which will cover people for this kind of situations. And MIFCOM, being the Association of Airlines, was welcomed the airline's decision to postpone flight dates for travelers who tested positive. So in our case, the people who cannot fly, they can at least still dream on flying in a deferred date. Yeah. Next, please. Oh, sorry, on the right, notice to airline. Okay, there's nothing. Okay. Next, please. Okay, to make Langkawi more lively, we even, MOTEC as a tourism ministry, we bring, we have buskers who have not got jobs for so long. They're not allowed to perform during the COVID time. So we're bringing about 8 group of buskers to play in all these places. In the airport, when you arrive, you see suddenly buskers are receiving you with some nice songs. For those who come by Koa Ferry Terminal, you have buskers playing at the cable car while waiting for your turn. The queue is very long. The buskers are playing music for you. And HIG is a complex where more for domestic market, people buy chocolates and coral and things like that, household products. So you have these people playing music in Chenang Square, Lang Square, Underwater World, Tanjung Rhu Square. So to us, to kickstart the island, besides having good procedures and so on, we want people to have to believe and feel that Langkawi is alive again. So we have all these musics around Langkawi. Next, please. Okay, this is the latest announcement by the government, which I'm sure you'll be asking about this, but now I tell you what the government has just announced. They say the opening of tourism centers and the allowance to cross border, which means it's about mobility. The other day, we cannot go anywhere because we cannot cross interstate. For example, we are in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, we cannot go to Negeri Sembilan, we cannot go to Malacca. So they say that you can cross border the moment the country, the country achieve 90% of vaccinated for the adults, which is if the adults in Malaysia reach 90%. Now we are actually reaching, we have 93% who have got first dose. So in 3 weeks' time, we believe all these people will be in the second dose. That means that we are almost ready. So in 3 weeks' time, actually, the scenario of the country will be very different. We do not have to open face by face or what, but the whole border will be open for you to be moving around. Mobility will be as usual. But before that, we were announcing like Tioman, Genting, Highlands, and Malacca to be open on the 1st. But this is a bigger announcement, which tells that let's wait for 90% national achievement. The whole country is like a highway. Okay, next, please. Okay, so this is Malay. Anybody knows what does it mean in Malay? Dah bersedia? Nak pergi ke Langkawi? You don't know? Okay, let me translate for you. Are you ready? So they say, are you ready? Do you want to go to Langkawi? So if you want, there's something I'd like to share with you for being nice audience, as a tribute for you who were not in Langkawi when they were being launched. I have a very interesting video. I like it so much that I asked from the Langkawi people, because maybe I asked because to keep it for you. So this video is dedicated to all of you. Is done during the opening or launching of Langkawi on the 15th of September. So please stay tuned. So the question come, are you ready to come to Langkawi, everyone?
Wow. Thank you, Zakaria. We can't wait to visit
Please,
Malaysia
please,
soon.
it's now open. I mean, for domestic, and just wait for the international borders to open, and please come.
Yes, keep us posted when Malaysia is
Sure.
open for international tourism. And I'm
Yes,
sure
sure.
Malaysians who want to escape restrictions will be flocking in Langkawi.
Yeah, they call it revenge tourism.
Yeah. We have a bit of time for a few questions before we go
Okay.
on our 10-minute break. We
Please
have a question from Hong Van. Would you like to ask your question directly to Mr. Zakaria?
Please, yeah.
Sure. I just want to ask you, what do you imagine when Malaysia is opening for international tourism? I think one of the things that all countries got to come together and decide is say countries recognize the vaccine passport, because right now, we use so many different kind of vaccine. For example, here in Vietnam we have Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, and even with those three very popular vaccine, say the US right now is still not really recognize AstraZeneca, and AstraZeneca vaccine is produced in so many countries, and and each of the country produce vaccine, AstraZeneca is also need different approval, not to mention other kind of vaccines, say the Chinese one, the Cuban ones. So how do you imagine that understandings and approval on different vaccine passports?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Miss Hong Van. Do I pronounce correctly your name?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, actually, yeah, every countries have their own preference on what kind of brands and things like that. Like now we also have an inquiry, for example, from Russia, they're using Sputnik or something like that. So what's going to happen? All you need to do is just, if it's not in our list of the normal things that we use, just send it to us, and then the Ministry of Health will evaluate and then decide. But most of the time, to us, it's all about, if the international body is accepting it, we will just adhere to them. I think most of our vaccines are adhered by what? UNESCO, what's the international body for health? The
WHO.
Yeah,
the
WHO,
World
yes.
Health
So
Organization.
if the WHO recognize, it's easier for us to just follow through. Unless it's something unique and new and not in the list, then we have to do some research for that. But generally, we welcome everyone, and we hope most of the vaccines are acceptable in this country. Any other questions?
Zakaria, I have a question. So since since you talk about tourism workers or workers in general who are relying on movement or mobility, I just want to ask an update on the reopening of the Singapore-Malaysia border, since many Malaysians work in Singapore but live in Johor Bahru. It seems that what is stalling the talks between Singapore?
Actually, there's a special committee comprised of these foreign affairs, the immigration, the police, from both sides to make sure. I think generally the sentiment is about how safe will my people be when they come to your country, and how safe am I to receiving you into our country. So these are the things that is a tug of war between you want to be safe and you want the money. So it's like, if you want to be too safe, you don't get the money, but you want to be greedy, you will have the risk of this kind of thing. So there is this committee who evaluate and balance this up. But to us as a tourism body, we have been waiting that we hope there is some kind of agreement and some kind of understanding with these countries. So to begin with, we just start the story by telling the world, within Malaysia, we are now starting to move. We are starting to believe that we should move, and we should believe in taking care, moving with the new norms, using the mask, you wash your hands, or the sanitizer. When you follow these new norms, well, with inshallah, things will be safe for everyone. Yeah.
And I think it will be good news for Singapore that soon you will reach 90% of your vaccination rate. So probably that would carry a lot of weight.
Sure. So we hope Singapore will look at us as a very safe, group of people to go into that country. You know, before that, the news was like too bad, and I'm sure every country will be worried about, oh, we should close our borders. But now, look, we are starting to move by in a few weeks' time, we'll be moving around like, you know, like usual. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, life goes on.
Thank you. Wonderful answer. Thank you for your questions, Hong Van, and to other participants, keep them coming. So we will be having a 10-minute break. Go stretch, go make a tea, cup of coffee. We still have 2 more sessions when we come back. See you in a bit.
Online.
Okay, welcome back. Who is better to talk about cooperation to revive tourism in ASEAN than a person who is a champion of inclusivity in travel and facilitated tourism in the Mekong Delta that connects several Asian countries? Our next speaker is the outgoing Executive Director and CEO of the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office and founder of Destination Mekong. He is also the second vice chair of the board of UNWTO affiliate members, Mr. Jens Thraenhart.
Great. Thank you very much, Kristin, for the nice introduction. Let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to join this, this masterclass. So as Kristin said, my name is Jens Thraenhart. I'm the outgoing Executive Director of the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office. Outgoing because I will be leaving mid-October. And we already have recruited a new executive director who will take over from me after almost 8 years in office. See, so talking about the Mekong region, obviously, I think what makes the Mekong region unique and similar to other countries in Southeast Asia is obviously the host of unlimited experiences from food, wellness, adventure, culture, and many other things that makes it really exciting and experiential for people to visit. The Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office is a regional tourism collaboration between the 6 member countries of the Greater Mekong sub-region, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and China. With China, as you can see on the map, it's focused on the 2 provinces as Yunnan and Guangxi. And our vision is tourism in the Greater Mekong sub-region is integrated, prosperous, equitable, and resilient with effective partnerships and knowledge management. So our branding is really around obviously the location, 1 river, 6 countries. But we added just a couple of years ago, unlimited experiences, because we believe that obviously the location alone will not inspire people to actually visit the region, but it's this host of unlimited experiences that I explained before. So when we look at COVID-19, obviously we all know that the situation, you know, and I'm not going deep into all the data, but you know, tourism contributed around 3.3% to 19.6% to the GDP of the GMS countries. Obviously, Thailand is one of the countries that has a very high GDP contribution, and that is all great when tourism works out well. But in a pandemic like what we're experiencing right now, obviously, that is very difficult. And also, we're seeing internationally that the COVID-19 infection rates are decreasing and vaccination rates are increasing. So we also see that now in this part of the world. So to summarize, I mean, really the key pieces here is that tourist arrivals have declined from 2019 to 2020 by almost 82%, and tourism receipts by over 72%. So when we look at our process in terms of building a strategy, we look at it maybe a little bit different. So I mean, we see it as a process, and the first process is really around restarting and then reforming and then rebalancing. And I'll go into detail what that means, but it's really a broader strategy, because what we want to achieve is really a resetting of the tourism landscape, so that we don't go back to the times of, you know, over tourism and unbalanced and not inclusive drivers. So I think also we need to take into account that we're battling not just with COVID, but with other issues as well, such as climate change and pollution and all these kind of things. So I think these all need to be integrated into the strategy. So when we look at obviously this strategy, we have these three pieces. And this is also the theme of our Destination Mekong Summit, which is our second Destination Mekong Summit, which is upcoming on October 21 and 22. It's free for you to join. We have a pay what you can program, but you can go to the URL at the bottom, destinationmekong.com/DMS21. And in the next couple of days, the event website will be live as well. So it will be a great program over 2 half days, so 2 afternoons. And we're looking to tackle this program on this problem of restarting, reforming, and rebalance, and what that means. So when we look at restart, so for us, restarting is really a way to look at what I said before. How do we look at consistent communications? How do we also look at a restart campaign? So where we look at inspiring people about the experiences that people can have, but also helping businesses that are suffering right now to obviously get revenues very quickly. So building capacity, digital transformation, basically getting ready. That's what we believe in, is in the restart process. So right now, I mean, we believe that it's still going to be until 2024 until really tourism starts again. And it's quite interesting when you look at this process. You can actually go back to the Spanish flu and the Roaring '20s, and there are a lot of parallels to be drawn. I don't own a crystal ball. Many people seem to have a crystal ball. I unfortunately don't have that, but I think what we learned is we can actually go back into the past and learn a lot what happened there. And there, as I said, a lot of parallels to be drawn from. So the path to tourism restart is then businesses in a destination must be engaged. Destinations must be kept top of mind of travelers. Capacity must be built for businesses to react to changing markets. And the revenues need to be generated for businesses to survive. So the first thing is, so we will, it's not published yet. So actually you're probably one of the first people that see the cover and the content here. So we just had this approved by our board meeting with our 6-member countries, but this is going to be published in October. This is in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank. And it's really around how do we communicate in a consistent way to our stakeholders and travelers and also communities what a restart of tourism in the Mekong region means. So the objective is really to guide dissemination of accurate and engaging information to support a safe and sustainable GMS tourism restart. The key messages are around building trust. So we have managed COVID-19 well, or in other words, we have learned a lot. We've made a lot of learning experiences during this process to care for our visitors and have put appropriate health and safety measures in place. We're welcoming. We're open for business and welcome domestic and international tourists when we're ready. And we're promoting sustainability. We're managing tourism more sustainably for people and the planet. And lastly, we deliver and provide inspiring experiences. So we offer diverse and authentic experiences, including family, beach, holidays, pristine nature, city trips, couples retreats, gourmet, culinary. And we remember our last visits where we had relaxing discoveries with friends, and they tell us what you like us to do now. So it's really to engaging past travelers to share their past experiences to inspire travelers in the future. And this is obviously built around a model with phases. Obviously, these phases can vary from country, even from destination to destination. So I mean, phase 1 is obviously international borders are closed. We're still in that phase, even though we heard about Langkawi, we heard about Phuket Sandbox, that there are ways to welcome international travelers, vaccinated international travelers already. But I think in general, we're in a phase right now where international borders are still closed. We have firm dates to reopen borders. There would be phase 2, so we're getting ready. Phase 3 would be one or more international travel corridors are established or have been established, and domestic travel is largely unrestricted. And then phase 4, the opening of international and domestic travel policies is similar to pre-pandemic levels, not likely until at least 2023, I would say 2024. So the recovery communication principles are 3 pillars. The first one is aligned content. So it's really generating content and messages that match GMS countries' relevant COVID-19 recovery policies and the GMS tourism sector strategy objectives to promote inclusive, sustainable, and resilient tourism. The second pillar is facilitate engaging conversations among public and private GMS tourism stakeholders and consumers using tools that foster two-way communications. So you're really using inspiring storytelling, tone of voice, and language best suited for intended audiences. And the third pillar is proactively connecting stakeholders electronically and in person using appropriate channels to build trust and relationships that is cost-effectively broad information dissemination and exchange. So the first thing that we're looking at when we look at content is to leverage the phenomenon of social media to create a visual content cloud of shared experiences by travelers and residents. How does this work? It's really our integrated tourism recovery campaign, where we look at inspiring storytelling, trusted recommendations, and valuable offers. So it's really 3 components integrated into one campaign. So one is called Mekong Memories, and there we reach out to past travelers via companies or businesses. So let's say a hotel, a restaurant, a tour company might go out via their social media or their email database or whatever to their past guests, but even also to their current domestic travelers and residents, and ask them to share their past experiences on their own social media, tagging it with Mekong Memories and the destination and the business. We aggregate that through a unique social media or social commerce technology. It's a Singaporean company. And then basically connect that back to the business. So we create a social commerce paradigm. So basically how that works is then the more content that's shared of a destination or a business that is then connected to that business. So then the business can drive a business or get more exposure. So there's a benefit for these businesses obviously to get engaged. And as we have learned is if there is no benefit for businesses to really get a tangible outcome, they just don't engage, right? So that's where we build this social commerce component with this company called Invoke out of Singapore. The second piece is what we call Mekong Deals. So Mekong Deals is unique because there we're asking travel companies to upload discounted vouchers, discounted deals that can be purchased via vouchers. And again, Mekong Memories and Mekong Deals are connected because if there is if someone shares a past experience from a hotel and that hotel has a deal that has been uploaded, then if I see that picture from someone, then I can link directly to that deal. And the third part is what we call Mekong Secrets. And Mekong Secrets is really trusted recommendations, these hidden gems, and what makes all this travel exciting, because it's about these hidden, unique, authentic experiences, and they can be shared by residents, but also by travelers. So again, I mean, this is really the platform where we look at content to inspire and keep destinations top of mind via visual content cloud, commerce, creating immediate revenue streams for businesses via discounted vouchers, and collaboration, strengthen resilience and accelerate tourism recovery via cooperation, because this is not driven by one organization. This is really bottom up, where every stakeholder, every business is engaged, but also the governments and also the travelers and residents themselves as well. So what we obviously, research has shown that engaging storytelling and deals drive commerce. And we have seen that actually the conversion ratio is more than 400% higher than normal sales deals. So that obviously means that this platform can help businesses, especially small businesses, get immediate revenues so they can survive this pandemic. The system structure basically looks like that. We have these three components: memories, secrets, and deals. Then we have various marketing automation tools for these businesses, and all these businesses, they're in a central database where they sign up, and then their information is distributed. So what's unique about this is that these businesses running social media contests, then travelers share these stories on social media. More content is promoted via the platform. More people planning to travel or get inspired. More people then getting connected to these businesses via the visual content. And then more direct traffic and bookings are generated. And then with more bookings being generated, more people then getting engaged and sharing their experiences again. So that's really how we strengthen the brand and how we're looking to restart tourism in the Mekong region. Now going to the second pillar, reform. So this is really around innovation. So we believe that we cannot operate the way we've done before. So tourism must be reformed to leverage innovations in technology, data, and digital media. Social enterprises have an important role to play to innovate experiences to create social impact. And new destination marketing and management needs to be created and public-private partnerships need to be at the core. So we look actually what we are working on with the UNWTO affiliate members is we believe that the role of destination marketing organization evolves, and so must its business model. So the public and the private sectors must collaborate. Together, these two forces can achieve greatness, and this is especially vital preparing for a sustainable tourism recovery. Now, this really means that create public and private partnership frameworks to engage stakeholders and create inclusive initiatives to strengthen resilience and sustainability has been not just now during the COVID-19 pandemic, but even before, our core pillar of building strategies and executing initiatives for Mekong tourism. So what we created is, on one hand, there is the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, which is owned by the 6 member countries. And this is really the public sector pillar. This is over 15 years old. It's hosted by the Ministry of Tourism and Sports of Thailand. And then we created in 2017 our Destination Mekong platform, which is a private sector-led regional tourism board. We're now in the process of incorporating Destination Mekong in Cambodia, and the Ministry of Tourism Cambodia has actually volunteered and stepped up to be the host country of Destination Mekong. So due to that engagement with the government and the private sector, we actually have created a very strong public-private partnership framework with residents, travelers, and businesses and the public sector. So there's a lot of initiatives that we have created over the last 4 years, and there are more that are coming. You may have heard of Mekong Moments, or Mekong Mini Movie Festival, or our Experience Mekong Collection, or Mekong Heroes, or our MIST program, our Mekong Innovation Sustainable Tourism. So we have quite a few programs out there, but what's unique is that all these programs are actually integrated. So I want to touch on a few, because we're talking about this reforming tourism pillar still. And here's how we're looking to innovate. So we have created the Experience Mekong collection that has over 300 social enterprise businesses in this collection. These are the businesses that really drive these authentic, unique experiences. But on the other hand, they're the ones that actually providing social impact. And we believe the more powerful these social enterprises are, the more social enterprises we have, and the more exposure they get, the more sustainable a destination will be. Just a quick snapshot. Right now, we have around 150 businesses that are active. And you can see a quick snapshot where they are. And we have them also in 6 categories, from stay, eat, shop, do, tour, and cruise. We also have started an initiative where we're helping these businesses during this time, where we're on the website. They can actually post if they're looking for donations or if they're selling discounted vouchers. Now, what's happening, obviously, is a lot of these people that visit these small social enterprises and responsible travel businesses, they take photos like this one or that one, and we aggregate them into our platform, or people share them via our Mekong Memories campaign that we're looking to launch, and then people can get inspired and then look to either a book or buy a voucher, a discounted voucher on the Mekong Deals platform. Also, this is great for setting standards and building capacity, because these small businesses now, via the Experience Mekong collection, created a community. They share best practices. We're able to kind of offer webinars. We're offering tools. We're now in the process of creating a new consumer website, experiencemekong.com. That's about to go live as well. So again, I mean, there's a lot of stuff where this shared collaboration can also help these small businesses not only to survive the pandemic, but also to actually really drive the restart of the region. Part of that is our Experience Mekong showcases. So for the last 3 years, we're actually in the 4th year right now. We always recognize one business per country as a Experience Mekong showcase. We partnered with Mahidol University in Thailand, and with the students, they're writing these case studies. You actually can download them for free. They're very inspiring. If you go to destinationmekong.com, you look for Experience Mekong showcases, and all these showcases are available for free. So it's very exciting, because not only gives it a background, almost like a behind the scenes view of how these businesses operate, but it also inspires other businesses to learn from each other and become more socially responsible. The other program that's also integrated is our Mekong Innovations in Sustainable Tourism program, our MIST program. It actually started as a startup program and was called first Mekong Startups in Innovative Tourism, also MIST. We kept the brand, but we evolved the program and we broadened it, not just for startups, startups are still included, but also for other innovations. So we now have 3 tracks: growth, launch, and projects. And we just actually, today is the last day. You can still vote. I think if you go to destinationmekong.com or our social media, you can still vote until midnight today for your favorite shortlisted innovations. It's actually quite inspiring. And then we're looking to have a pitch contest actually at our Mekong World Tourism Day Forum, which is on October 6th and 7th. It's in partnership with UNWTO. And we have some inspiring speakers from Bill Bensley and Jimmy Pham. Again, this event is free. We have this pay what you can program, and you can go to destinationmekong.com to register for free. But again, what I said is, this is where we're going to have the final pitches for our Experience Mekong showcases and also for our MIST finalists. So it's going to be a very inspiring 2 half days, 2 afternoons, Thailand time. So I hope many of you can join and maybe even promote it via your publications. Now let's move to the 3rd pillar, which is rebalance. Now, rebalance, I'm not going to talk too much about, because this is what happened in 2014. So if we're going to look at restarting is really 2001, 2022, reforming is 22, 23, and rebalance starts after 24. Now, why is rebalance so important? I've been talking about achieving balanced tourism before the pandemic, and our theme for the Mekong Tourism Forum in Bagan in 2020, which actually didn't happen because of COVID-19, was achieving balanced tourism. Now, why did I think balanced tourism is so important? Because I believed at that time, looking at over tourism, that, you know, actually the pendulum was swinging too far to the left. So we didn't have balance. There was a lot of greed. There was a lot of overcrowding. There wasn't a lot of inclusiveness. And this was damaging tourism. Residents were pushing back. You know, we have all these pictures in mind from cruise ships in Barcelona, in Venice, and in Hoi An, and in pictures like this. And we can, you know, all agree that tourism, you know, wasn't in balance. Life wasn't in balance. You know, it's almost like if you have a headache and you take too many headache pills, yes, your headache goes away, but in the end, the problem doesn't go away. So many times when we look back in history, hundreds of thousands of years, when something is out of balance, you know, for it to get back into balance, the pendulum all the time, you know, and history can prove that it swings to the extreme, to the other side. Now, in 2019, I could have not have predicted a pandemic, but this is exactly what happened. The pendulum swung from the extreme left to the extreme right with no tourism. So again, but this is now the opportunity now to rebalance tourism and to really come and have this pendulum in the center, in the middle. And this is where we really want to have driving this Experience Mekong brand, where we're promoting sustainable and inclusive travel, where we're achieving balanced tourism for all. We're also looking at issues like climate change, plastic pollution, obviously at other pandemics, and other issues that are underlying there and that we need to look at. So I want to share with you a video now, and I hope it does play, which is our Destination Mekong brand video. And what's unique about this video is this actually was curated from shared content, you know, that we have received via our Mekong Moments campaign, our Mekong Mini Movie Festival campaign, and so on. So it's really a very inclusive campaign. So I hope it plays. now you can see all the contributors to the video. So that's what I mean by, obviously a very inclusive initiative. And the nice thing about this is that we can leverage this video, and we can obviously always update it with new content. Let me just see. Okay. So really, this is what Mekong tourism is all about. So it's really about living this Experience Mekong brand of unlimited experiences. If you want to learn more about our initiatives, you can go to bit.ly / Mekong Tourism 2021 and download our Mekong Tourism booklet, which gives you more detail about all our initiatives. And with that, thank you very much. And I'll give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens, for that wonderful session. I was so engrossed with the video. Unfortunately, we are a bit short on time for questions, but we will have you answer those questions later at our Q&A portion. So we are on our final stretch to give insights on how to restore the confidence of travelers in the new normal. Our final speaker is the president of the ASEAN Tourism Association and the head of the Indonesia Affairs and Policy Department of AirAsia, Mr. Eddy Krismeidi Soemawilaga.
Thank you, Kristin. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon from Jakarta. Hi, Jens. Hope everyone is in health and good condition. I'd like to thank for invitation given to me to participate in this masterclass organized by Kiniacademy. My presentation this afternoon will focus on effort undertaken by ASEAN in restoring the confidence of traveler, which mainly focus on international travel, which currently many countries have started. They're opening up of their border, but still focusing on their own. There is not yet a joint facilitation on the ground, as they still focusing their effort in domestic. Before I begin, can we move to the next slide? Just to introduce who is ASEAN. ASEAN is actually ASEAN Tourism Association with headquarters actually in Malaysia, in Putrajaya, together with Ministry of Tourism and Culture of Malaysia. And ASEAN currently has 35 members, ranging from National Hotel Association, National Travel Agent Association, airlines, and National Tourism Organization from ASEAN countries. Under my tenure from 2021 up to 2023, the focus of effort of ASEAN will be focusing on supporting the recovery effort of the industry impacted by COVID-19, as well as the strengthening ASEAN position as a regional association. Next. As an ASEAN CSO, ASEAN also support the collaboration with the ASEAN National Tourism Organization as a partner. And as part of guideline of tourism cooperation within ASEAN, there are ASEAN Tourism Strategic Plan, which actually expected to guide all the implementation of measures and activities for the ASEAN NTOs. And ASEAN as partner involved in at least 5 joint activities that are currently being prepared or undertaken. First one is actually on updating framework materials for mutual recognition arrangement on tourism professionals. Second is actually establishing bundling packages, which could comprise of airline, ticket, hotel, and tour packages in relation to the recovery of COVID-19. Then, of course, promotion of ASEAN hygiene and safety standards, which currently the principle is being developed by a project under ASEAN NTOs, which cover guideline of principle available from all ASEAN countries. So I think this project is identifying all the common principle being implemented in each country in terms of hygiene and safety standard, which currently implemented to boost the confidence of travel in visiting their tourism establishment, tourism destination, or the facility, including transportation. And for COVID-related measure, there are two measures that currently ASEAN is undertaking. First one is actually repository information on COVID tourism-related measure undertaken by ASEAN countries, as well as the possibility to establish the ASEAN One Digital Platform for travelers and tourists, which I think is quite a tall order for us to come up with this within the current situation, which I would explain in the subsequent deck that I have prepared. So let's move to the next slide. Moving into COVID, this is the figure on 23 September, I think 2 days ago, where you can see that many Western countries are still dominating number of total cases, COVID cases in the world. And from ASEAN countries, I only cover up to 13. There is Indonesia in number 13, where daily cases had dropped from daily 50,000 cases in July to daily to 2,000 to 3,000 cases. And from here, you can see that, as you can read from the news and everything, the reaction of governments are different from one to another. There are governments that, even within the current condition, reduce the restriction and allow their people to undertake activities and travel even with minimum travel restriction. But there are also governments that put more restriction, though the cases are, compared to others, are relatively low. So I think these are the current situation that we are having in the world. And if you see the next slide, if you see that in the case of US, for example, and Western Europe, which you may see in the previous slide, the numbers of cases are quite high. You can see that the cases for United States, which I use weekly traffic as an indicator, weekly flight traffic as indicator. You can see that in US, the flight frequency per week for this week has reached around 152,000 flights per week, which is equivalent to 83% from 2019. So it's almost quite high in terms of reaching the numbers of flight frequency within the country. And if you compare with Western Europe, it is now, this week is 83,207 flights per week, or equivalent to almost 60% of 2019 performance. So as this can see that with the opening of their borders and activities within their country, though the cases are still high, they have already contributed to numbers of flight frequency, which indicate the high travel and the travel recovery is taking place in both country and region. Next. Well, if we compare on the level of restriction based on the UNWTO Tourism Recovery Tracker, North America and Western Europe is at 33%. And this figure actually is only up to June. I haven't seen the latest figure. They usually come up every, I think, quarterly. I haven't seen for September. They should come up with September. But you can see that the restriction of US and Western Europe is only 33, compared to our part of region Southeast Asia, which is at 82%. And 82% is actually number 2 in terms of the highest restriction, and number 1 is actually Oceania, which is covering Australia, New Zealand, which I think is quite understandable on that situation. But this 82% has been constant in terms of restrictions. So as it has created significant impact to our tourism and travel industry within the region. You can see that in the next slide. So with such high level of restriction, it has contributed to significant negative impact of travel and tourism industry within the region. And you may expect that at the beginning, many countries, when we started this pandemic in March last year, they expect that this could last within a few months, but apparently it is not. And based on that restriction that being imposed within ASEAN region, ASEAN experienced a drop of 80% of international visitor arrival in 2020, where it was only reached 26 million arrival. And with such drop, receipt from tourism sector from many ASEAN countries have been significantly dropped by 76% compared to 2019. This figure is for 2020. And also followed by job, which was dropped by 70% due to prolong of Delta variant as well. And if you see the figure of flight frequency, and if we compare with the US and Western Europe, even for 2021, our statistic is even lower from 2020. Currently, this week, our flight frequency for Southeast Asia region, based on the data coming from CAPA, is only 19,871, or only 34% from 2019. So it's still far away from the actual figure that we would expect from 2019, which I think that contributed to our performance within the region. That is especially for the industry, because this affects a lot on the travel and tourism industry within the region. Next. Vaccination has been considered as the game changer, where we have seen the progress of vaccination in ASEAN countries. Some countries have already achieved significant progress in terms of vaccination, but some countries are also struggling in terms of getting the vaccination for their citizens. On top of that, some ASEAN countries have big population, like for example, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, which I think, though we have numbers of high vaccination rate, but in terms of percentage, those that have been vaccinated are still relatively low. You can see that in the next slide. So in here, you can see that some countries have achieved target of herd immunity, like Singapore, of course, and followed by Cambodia. Later, also Malaysia will follow. But some other countries are still below the target, which I think it will take times in order for us to really achieve the target that we would expect. And most countries are expecting to reach 70% herd immunity in order for them to really open their border. And those countries that have already have indicated readiness to reopen their border for international traffic, not only for business but also for social or leisure travel, which I think you are all aware about the development of Singapore Vaccinated Travel Land as well as the Phuket Sandbox. Next. So despite of those situations in terms of vaccination, in terms of cases, in terms of restriction, I would like to acknowledge that there are some positive development taking place in the region, which I hope that would inspire more border openings within the region through early preparation made by government as well as the stakeholder. Of course, the first development that have already taken place is actually the Phuket Sandbox, where currently the performance has been quite good. Of course, in terms of traffic is relatively low. But the most important thing for us to learn from Phuket Sandbox is actually it creates as a pilot for country to learn and upgrade how the opening during the pandemic, and at the same time, it also a reference. It creates a reference for other ASEAN countries to really follow through this initiative properly. And in here, you may see that the figure is relatively low and modest. And however, in terms of cases, COVID positive cases that arrive is also relatively low. I think 28 over 10,000 visitor arrival. And then I think that's something that we could see that there is effectiveness in terms of filtering the traveler through requirements, which is vaccination, as well as the PCR test before they really arrive to the destination. In addition to that, they have also indication made by a number of countries that are considering to change the treatment of this COVID-19 from pandemic to endemic. And for example, Indonesia, as a case, recently the president has decided that we are preparing for the treatment for COVID-19 from pandemic to endemic by installing number of measures, including the contact tracing that has been massively being required to all Indonesian citizens. And also followed by other countries, as well as Singapore also is working towards that direction. And other ASEAN countries will follow suit in order to have the preparation for this endemic treatment. Next. Taking into account those positive development happening within ASEAN and other part of the world, we would like to highlight the importance of safe border openings for international travel, especially taking into account that 44% of international arrival within ASEAN region is coming from ASEAN itself. And second, if we learn from the development taking place in two countries that have already opened unilaterally, like for example, Singapore and Phuket Sandbox in Thailand, the response from the source market are relatively low. But of course, this has not been really materialized for ASEAN region because many of ASEAN countries still requiring their citizen when they go abroad and go back to the country to have to apply for quarantine when they arrive. Like in Indonesia, we have 8 days quarantine requirement for those who travel abroad from Indonesia. And of course, some other countries are not also allowing their citizens to travel to internationally. And from here, we actually expecting that the ASEAN travel corridor arrangement that is currently being finalized by the task force led under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs could enlighten us in terms of the reopening of border for the ASEAN region, especially to facilitate business travel and also hopefully to also facilitate the leisure travel within the region. But currently, last week when I received information from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, who is chairing that committee, the ASEAN Travel Corridor framework arrangement is only focusing for business and essential travel. And it is also only a guideline, not really a document that binding to all ASEAN countries. So this is only a reference for countries to open, but we certainly hope that this could be also followed by countries so as to minimize differences that is happening between the country. what we are proposing in terms of the travel corridor, of course, we are proposing that if there are traffic between low-risk countries or destination, pre-departure and arrival testing could be minimum. Vaccinated travelers could be exempted from the quarantine requirement. Then self-isolation for only waiting for PCR result of PCR test on arrival. Then we are also hoping for those source country within the ASEAN countries itself to put no quarantine requirement for returning travelers that travel to those destinations that have been opened. Of course, there's still no existence on how this mutual recognition of testing procedures are taking place. Each country has their own requirement, which I think somehow is quite confusing in terms of market. Some are requiring, for example, 48 hours before departure. Some others are requiring 72 hours before departure. So I think those kind of differences are already in existence in the requirement, which I think ASEAN is proposing that to have that requirement become common. The other thing that we also highlight the importance is actually the common vaccine documentation for each verification, which currently most of the vaccination documentation is on hard copy, and there is yet harmonized process to have that being recognized in ASEAN countries. Individual country has put different requirement also, which I think is it would be good if that could be harmonized. And the other thing that we have also issue that could be happening in the near future is actually the common health passport or travel pass, which currently individual country, again, I think still require its own application, but there is not yet available on how actually that requirement could be harmonized among ASEAN countries, which I think I will highlight in the separate deck presentation after this. Can we move to the next slide? So in line with that requirement, actually international organization, including ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and encourage use of a risk management system as basis for imposition of travel measure, where there are numbers of potential cut-off value, such as the prevalence, which is 7-day cases per 100,000 rate, which cut-off is actually 25 cases per 100,000 case. Second is on the test positivity rate, which is 5%, as the cut-off with the goal being below 5% for the test. The third is actually testing rate, where actually state has a testing capability of 250 tests per 100,000 people per week. And from that cut-off point, it is identified that there are possible color coding based on the condition on a cut-off value. So green, so the origin state or area below it is below the cut-off value of 1 and 2 above. Orange is origin state area is below the cut-off value of 1 or 2 above, both, but not both. Red is if the origin state or area exceed the cut-off value of 1 and 2 above, and gray if there is insufficient data. So if the requirement of traveling between green to green, then there is no restriction or requirement. If from orange, it could require a passenger locator forms or testing, but no travel restriction. And if it's red or gray, then we can put restriction to travelers movement dependent on symptom and exposure or test. So I think this kind of references guideline is available internationally, which is also aligned with WHO requirement. And I think this could be a reference for the border reopening for the ASEAN region. Next. mentioned earlier, some countries have reopened their border for international travel, and there are certain requirements. And to be eligible as certain type of traveler, traveler would require to fulfill certain requirement. And from that point of view, in the travel and tourism industry must aware and understand on how this SOP, so as they could facilitate the traveler from origin to destination. And of course, at the same time, the travel journey have to be abide by certain requirement from the origin during the international transport or international travel in destination, then when they get back to the home country. And at the end, ultimately, we are hoping that all these quarantine requirement could be taken out, so as there's confidence for traveler to visit their destination. And ASEAN is currently focusing their effort on this. Last week, we had already a task force for ASEAN border reopening by inviting Phuket Sandbox and when Singapore VTL. And we are trying to identify what are the common requirements or common principles from those two destinations. Next step, we will be more focusing on the SOP, so as they can really identify what are the common requirements within SOP, so as destination could also have at least similar SOP that we can apply in each destination, so as to minimize the confusing of the traveler within the region. And next slide. You can see that from Singapore VTL, and there are these key requirements on the left side, where actually there are requirements for traveler coming from two countries, which is currently Germany and Brunei. They have to be in Germany or in Brunei for 21 consecutive days. They have to be fully vaccinated. They have to fly with a dedicated flight. For Singapore, they call VTL flight. They have to cover by insurance 30,000 for COVID-19 related medical treatment, as well as they have 4-time PCR tests, which is pre-departure, arrival, day 3, and day 7, in order for them to be eligible to have no quarantine requirement within Singapore. This is for Singapore VTL. And we move to Phuket in the next slide. So in here, in the next slide, Phuket identify more countries, like in Phuket Sandbox, based on the 16 August information, there are 70 countries of origin identified within the Phuket Sandbox that could be eligible to arrive or to join, come to Phuket. There's requirement also on direct flight. Insurance coverage is much more higher, which is USD 100,000, same for COVID-19 related measure. Same requirement for fully vaccination. And of course, there are also requirements for PCR tests, pre-departure, departure, and some other days after they arrive in Phuket and or other destination. And from here, in the next slide, I think in terms of performance, up to 2 days ago, the number of arrival has been around 35,804 arrival in Phuket with all these direct flights. And if you see the cases itself, number of positive cases is relatively low. As I mentioned earlier, it's around 28 of 10,000. So I think this creates confidence for countries that are planning to reopen their border to see that the measure is quite effective to really filter those travelers that would come to the destination. So next slide. So here you can see that there are numbers of common requirements that are already in place for both destination. Minimum stay in country of origin, vaccination, application of in Thailand you have certificate of entry, but I was told that it will be taken off. Then also for Singapore, they have to apply for Singapore VTL. Then there's a dedicated flight, VTL flight for Singapore, as well as direct flight for Phuket. COVID insurance, as well as the PCR tests that are 4 times for both destinations. So on top, with this kind of requirement, so in the next slide, as I mentioned earlier, ASEAN is organizing the task force on safe border opening. And we see that there are common from the last task force of that we have last week. We see that there are common requirements for both existing initiatives. And as you know that from the number of restrictions in the world, many parts of the region in the world are already open. So for us, it's really currently it's only 2. So in order to strengthen the appeal of the region, what we recommend to both destinations is actually to work together to have joint collaboration in order for this to have appeal, strengthen appeal in the world. So maybe current rotation that is possible is actually for those travelers from, say, Germany going to Singapore, they can right away go to Phuket Sandbox with minimum requirement. I think this kind of arrangement are suggested to the existing arrangement. And currently, private sector and also the NTOs, we have already conveyed that requirement to them. And we are hoping that from the private sector entity, we are working towards that direction. And this could also be followed by other destinations that are preparing. Like, for example, we have Bali, Indonesia. Recently, we have Langkawi, Siem Reap in Cambodia, as well as Vuk Vuk in Vietnam. So I think this kind of arrangement is recommended for other destinations to follow suit. Next. In order to have that strong appeal for the region, harmonization of risk assessment and methodology and standard of testing and quarantine procedure is required to boost traveler confidence within the region. Common risk assessment framework, health documentation, contact tracing, and vaccination, which at the end would be able to relax testing and quarantine requirement, especially for those coming from low-risk country visiting low-risk destination. I understand that the establishment of this corridor arrangement at ASEAN level would need some time, and ASEAN is currently actively undertaking consultation with those countries that are ready and have plans to open their destination through relevant stakeholder and government engagement. It could begin with those that are ready countries and follow by destination through bilateral framework to smooth travel experience and reduce or avoid quarantine requirement in both destination and home countries. And with this, we can improve the assurance of travel and confidence of travelers to visit the country. Next. Currently, we have multiple types of travel documents needed, and currently what we are doing is through manual process. And through manual process, verification is insecure and results is exhaustive. And for that, I think we need longer time to really undertake checking. And there is a big risk on fake certificate or falsifying document that is given by the passenger. So as to minimize that situation, next, ASEAN is proposing to have this common digital health passport protocol as single tool for COVID-19 health records, which currently is only available in individual countries, not yet linking with others. Not at the same time, there is no also unifier being recognized due to a certain issue, which mostly the cross-border data privacy. Next slide, so I can conclude my last slide. So this is the digital health credential that is available in countries. I identify 5, namely, I think Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, and Malaysia, my Sejahtera, and they are available in the countries. And currently, there is no unifier of all of these. And most of the cases is actually issue on a cross-border data privacy. And currently, as you may notice in the beginning of slide, we are tasked to identify this possible digital platform for to facilitate tourists traveling within the region. And we are still working on it to identify what will be the best solution that we have, because this cross-border data privacy issue is still inexistent. We have, for example, IATA Travel Pass, but it's still not many countries that has been adopted IATA Travel Pass as the unifier for all these requirements. So I think for this, ASEAN is still working in progress. We try to identify. We will have a task force meeting to discuss this specifically in 2 weeks from now. So I think that's all my presentation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Eddy. Very informative presentation. We will now have our Q&A portion with all of our speakers. Participants may also raise your hand if you want to ask your questions vocally. First, I want to Pak Eddy, I want to ask you, since you are from the ASEAN, since the COVID-19 pandemic appears to stay longer with emergence of various variants, how will this impact the future travel and tourism? Do we see an ASEAN travel bubble soon to promote tourism in the region? By the way, that's from Torn from Cambodia.
I think the confidence of government to really reopen the borders is really still developing at developing stage. For example, the case of preparation for the ASEAN travel corridor arrangement, which focusing on business travel. The declaration of this is actually in November last year through the summit. But in order to come up with that such document, which is non-binding document, negotiation among countries is quite heavy. I was in ASEAN Secretariat before, so I'm aware on how the discussion taking place, just only to develop a common guideline. So as what is ASEAN doing right now is we are starting with those that are ready first. So we start with, for example, Singapore, Thailand, and we try to come up with identify certain principles from both destinations. And from that both destination, we will come up with a reference that we encourage to all countries that are going to open to really do a similar arrangement, so as to minimize all the requirements. That's one. Second, at the same time, we also encourage to reopen the border for their own citizens, because 44% of international arrival within ASEAN is coming from ASEAN itself. But currently, traffic within ASEAN is not happening. Though within Phuket Sandbox, for example, there is numbers of ASEAN countries recognized that are allowed going for Phuket Sandbox, but those countries are not allowing their citizens to travel abroad. So still, I think still struggling on that issue. So I think we need to have a good way to have this. We have already started with 2, which I appreciate the effort, but we need to expand and building the confidence, be it government as well as the traveler itself, step by step. So I think by end of this year could be additional 2 or 3 destinations that will be reopen their borders. But I think we still time to. I think we still have to wait for some time to really have all countries to reopen. I think that's what we are facing right now.
How about you, Jens? You are originally from Germany. In Europe, the European Union have set standard travel measures and requirements for its member states. Do you think we can emulate that here in Asia, or at least at the GMS?
Oh, I don't know if I can answer that question. I mean, I think I think we need to recognize that all parts of the world are different, how they act, and obviously we can see that. But I think we can learn from different measurements, right? I mean, I think the Phuket sandbox, as Eddy said, and I think you as well, I think there are a lot of learnings that can be taken out and might be able to be adopted in other parts of the world as well. I mean, I think as it relates to Europe, even Europe is very diverse in terms of how the situation is. I think the advantage that we see in Asia is that, you know, when you look at Europe, I mean, here in Asia, I mean, I mentioned before, I mean, I'm now fully vaccinated, but I think just a few weeks ago, I didn't know if I ever get vaccinated. So I think here, you know, if you get the chance to get vaccinated, everyone is pretty much doing it. I mean, obviously there's some pushback on vaccines from, you know, various countries and so on. Some are maybe more preferred than others. But I think when you look at Europe, I mean, people go on the street because, and even also in North America, where they're pushing back on health passports, they're pushing back on being forced to be vaccinated and so on. So I think we're dealing with totally different dynamics in Asia versus Europe. And I think that, you know, is important to realize, you know, so things cannot be just bluntly copied, but I think learnings can be adopted potentially.
How about Zakaria, from the perspective of the government, is Malaysia open for having a standard travel measure with other Asian countries?
Of course, in the spirit of ASEAN, we are all ready to have a standard of, you know, measure, because we are working together to promote ASEAN as a destination to the outside world. So I don't think we would like to be left out behind, but we believe in doing it together and prosper together. Thank you.
What are your predictions? Zakaria, I'm asking you this because you just opened Langkawi. What are your predictions? Since it is not very long since you opened Langkawi for local travelers, what are your predictions on the rebound of tourism? Do you think that, you mentioned revenge travel earlier, do you think that leisure travel will bounce back?
I'm very sure, of course, because we have not seen each other for so long. I mean, the tourists are looking forward to come, and the travel industry have been waiting for the opportunity to rebound again. So it's all about, as we said, it's all about mobility. Once the government allows so that is why we start with domestic first, where we allow Malaysian to experience tourism and the industry people to serve the Malaysian first, and we see how the situation is like. We start with Langkawi. It looks like it's a good success story. Everything is under control, and for that reason, we believe to open up more. But once we open up more and we see that domestic is under control, then we look into the international borders to be open. At least this is also while waiting for other countries to accept us to have reciprocal travel bubble. So in the meantime, we focus on domestic travel and hope that by the time that our people are ready, our industry is ready, we really want to go out and also receive the tourists at the same time. Thank you.
Nice answer. Jens, you were unable to answer some of the questions earlier, and I personally wanted to ask you. You mentioned in one of your previous interviews that you don't really like the term travel recovery, and I am hoping that you can share your interesting answer here on why you don't like this term.
Well, I mean, I think when it comes, I mean, words matter in some part, but I think in the end, you know, when you look at the word recovery, I mean, it basically says that you're looking to go back to how you were before. And I mentioned in my presentation, I think, you know, how tourism was before the pandemic with, you know, overcrowding and you know, imbalance. I think there's a lot of stuff we can do better. And I think so a resetting of tourism as a word might be more appropriate. And that's also why, you know, even before the pandemic, I mentioned in my presentation, you know, we've been looking at balanced tourism, that concept of really, kind of finding the equilibrium and looking at inclusive growth and all of that. I mean, all these things are not foreign, but I believe just the word recovery just looks at a very, kind of like fast and non-strategic approach. Whereas I think we need to take into account, sustainability, climate change, and all these other components to make sure that, we leverage this opportunity now to make sure that tourism is better than it was before.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree with that, because we cannot just go back to how things were. And COVID definitely changed even my priorities. If I will be able to travel again soon, like I'm being overly concerned with safety and cleanliness, using digital wallets for transactions. What are the post-COVID travel trends that you are seeing in your sector? Jens?
You asking me? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think, everyone's kind of talking about, more experiential tourism, more, experiencing communities, rural tourism, and so on. So I think there's obviously something there where people say, yes, I mean, I want to go back, or, I want to have experiences that might not, be the mass tourist experiences. And again, I mean, I think that's on one hand, it's nice. I mean, one thing that I always tell people, I mean, we can look at the what's happening in China. I mean, China was 1.4 billion people. I mean, you have a, massive population that is traveling domestically. And so I think not only is a huge domestic market. I used to live in China for 5 years, but also it's obviously a massive outbound market, and a lot of destinations, a lot of travel companies are expecting that China will be the saving grace once it then opens up again. So I think, we can see a little bit of what's happening in China, how people are traveling. When I talk to people, in hotels in our, provinces, Yunnan and Guangxi, I mean, especially little boutique hotels, they are busier than even before COVID, so I think there is a trend that people are looking to do that. On the other hand, I have to say that, I mean, there have been obviously cruises that have sold out in a few hours, right? So, I mean, I think in the end, and I see a message here that in the chat where someone says it's impossible to control the greed factor and overcrowding. I agree with that. I mean, it's if you run a business, you're looking to survive. You're looking to, put people in your hotel or in your restaurant or whatever you do. So, I mean, it's a little bit harder for an operator to think, around managing that, because they need to put bread on the table. So I think that's where governments come in to really build policy frameworks that on one hand, obviously help these businesses to survive and to restart, but on the other hand, also protect the destinations and manage destinations better.
Thank you, Jens. How about you, Pak Eddy? Since you are from AirAsia, what are the travel trends that you are seeing in your sector?
Actually, in terms of tourism and travel, tourism cannot be replaced by anything else. Like, for example, like meeting, we can do meeting like through Zoom this time, but tourism cannot be replaced by virtual reality or something. They want to really experience whatever destination, or if they go with friends, they want to really see the friends and etc. So I think that's one thing. And what are really hindering for people to really travel is actually now, of course, the requirement is being imposed. If I may use the example of Indonesia, for example, because I work in Indonesia. In Indonesia, actually, in terms of traveling, even when we had highest restriction being placed due to Delta variant, for example, in July, there is no restriction for flights to travel. Actually, they just put additional requirement for people to travel. What are the requirements? Mostly vaccination. Second, PCR test for domestic. And PCR test in Indonesia to travel is equal to pay the price of the ticket itself. So you can imagine, so if you want to travel to Bali, for example, you have to have double price, because first you have to cover ticket, second is to cover PCR test. And because of that cost, and at the same time, the economic condition within the country, many people are also going down. So the ability for people to pay that kind of price is quite limited. And this is back and forth, because going out, you have to PCR. Going back, you have to be PCR. So I think the price is much more expensive. But once that price is going down, like for example now, requirement is reduced to antigen, which I think is only, in Indonesia now, antigen test is only $3 for test. It's automatically boost the travel. People are what we call as new normal, actually as if it's coming back to the normal situation, as long as if there is no COVID. Then people tend to forget. I think that's what in the fact. Of course, there are a lot of people that having concern, worry that's on safety and etc. But many people also tend to forget what are they experiencing. Therefore, in Indonesia, there is now police watching all this crowd just to check all this crowd not to happen, because people tend to socialize and get the crowd because they are enjoying by themselves. So I think that's the fact. I think in terms of a situation that we are happening. So in terms of recovery, I think you can see in Langkawi, because I'm also following Langkawi in terms of flights. Suddenly the flight is increasing, and it's also happened when Indonesia New Year holiday last year, where government allow for people to travel, and government provide incentive for traveling by covering the airport tax. It's just simply airport tax, but it suddenly affect all the traffic. And even for us, for AirAsia, we lack of aircraft during that time, because so many people are traveling. And the impact to that, in January and February, we have the second wave. So I think that's the thing. But now we are more safe, because there are vaccination, which I think they reduce the impact, the effect of the cases. But again, even with vaccination, you still can carry COVID-19. So I think that's what we are experiencing.
I would just like to ask you a follow-up question on that, because WTTC said that quarantine and testing protocols are roadblocks to reviving tourism because they make people hesitant to book. And you mentioned in your presentation a while ago that, you don't really agree with quarantine from going back, quarantining of people going back to their home country. What about testing? Once we achieve our vaccination target, will we be able to do away without testing? Or is it permanently here?
I think different government put up different requirements. But for example, UK is planning to get rid of PCR test requirement when they get back to the country. But in ASEAN, I believe the requirement of testing is still there. I don't know when it will be taken out. For example, correct me, Mr. Zakaria, if I'm wrong. Previously, Langkawi also planned to have no testing actually, but at the end, you have testing at the airport, right? Before you leave, then you have to test first. But for Indonesia, we have testing before we come to airport. That's been requirement since the beginning of COVID, and I didn't see any light that government will take out that requirement. Even now, the government is planning how to reduce the price for PCR tests, other than to get PCR tests rid from the requirement.
I think it is about how the trend goes. When we start, we try to do this. Who knows after 1 month of like perfect, perfect results. So we may realize that it may not be necessary, but it's just my own opinion. But like in the checkup too, when you say that, I believe it all depends on the government policy. Yeah.
Right. So there is a question. What are the significant changes in the tourism industry post-pandemic? Zakaria? Significant changes you've seen in the tourism industry?
In Malaysia or in the?
Let's have in Malaysia, I mean, in your home ground.
I think in the exchanges, people are now beginning to understand the importance of adhering to the norms and things like that, making sure of your safety, because people are, because in the past, when we open up, there's always big cases, the moment we open up a little bit, big cases because we may be, either we refuse to understand or we did not adhere to SOPs and things. But now, people are more educated, are more concerned, are more conscious about making sure that we are safe, we take care of people around us, our children and everything. That is why sometimes where there's opportunity to do something that is not right, people choose to do the right thing rather than when there are opportunities to break the rules. I give you an example. Today is my youngest boy birthday party. So I told that the whole family is going to dine out, but my daughter has been vaccinated but not enough days. So I told her, why not you just declare you are underage? Below 18, because she looks like a young girl, She said, no, it is not about I can go through that or not, but I myself feel that I'm not safe if I'm going there. So it was about the civic of understanding what should be. I'm the one who tell her not to do that, but is the people are getting more civic minded, is more cautious about moving around, especially the young generations. They read a lot and they understand and they know it is not about just about yourself or people around you, and the family that you love should be safe. Like children, people who have elderly parents in the hometown, they choose not to visit them because they believe that they're the most vulnerable age. Wait for the right time when the whole family is okay, that we have. Or else if you break the rule, there are some cases we heard, like there's this big family who are living in different houses, but suddenly all of them were positive. So when we checked, they came to a same birthday party. Things like this, because this news spread and educate us that if you love your family, don't see them. It's not about you love your family, try to find ways to see them. So people are more educated now.
Yeah, I agree. And we are a bit more responsible in that way. And happy birthday to your little boy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jens, would you like to add to that? What are the changes or that you see in the tourism industry post-pandemic?
Well, I think I would agree what has been said. I think in the immediate term, people will place safety and health very high, obviously. So I think they'll be careful. As Mr. Zakaria said, people will be more conscious, which at the beginning that probably wasn't the case, but now I think people have learned that if you're not careful, then that can harm you and your loved ones. So I think operators, from destinations to airlines to hotels to restaurants and so on, obviously have reacted. But I think what's lacking is that consistency. It seems like everyone is doing, their own thing or their own interpretation just to tick the boxes in terms of the policies that are out there. And sometimes, you go to a restaurant, and I think we've all experienced that, where, a waitress that clearly doesn't know why she's doing what she's doing, in terms of the health measurements, is doing something, or you go into a restaurant and, you walk through the temperature measuring station, maybe you didn't see it or whatever, or, some people don't, kind of run after you or something. So I think there needs to be some vigilance and some consistency, because if not, yes, I mean, someone may walk through and doesn't check the temperature, and probably nothing happens. But if someone else sees that and puts that on social media, it could affect that business, that company, that brand, and even the destination, right? I mean, as we know, Chinese travelers can be very fickle, and you know, so if something gets into the right or wrong channels, however you want to see it, it could make an impact. I think right now it's obviously a little bit too early for that, but I think there will be a time when travelers will evaluate, you know, if a destination is safe based on what is being said on social media.
Right. Eddy, anything to add to that?
I think from airline perspective, yeah. First, I think in terms of planning for travel, now people are much shorter in terms of planning, not like before pre-COVID. Now, before pre-COVID, you might plan your holiday maybe a year in advance, no? Or maybe 6 months in advance. Now, for short destination, like for example, ASEAN destination or domestic destination, in current plan, most people are planning only week, maybe 2 weeks or 1 week maximum. I think that's one of the character, because they're not sure whether they can really fly or not fly because of the condition or of the situation as well. And the situation will still be like this, I think, for I think years to come, because until this COVID is really totally gone. Second, they tend to be now travel independently in a small group. They don't want to be in a big group because they want to be really feel secure. Maybe biggest group will be family, but I think in terms of friends and I think they try to travel with what they know rather than to have in a package. I think that's the other thing that we also look in terms of this. The third is actually they tend to be visiting more on the outdoor facilities, outdoor like nature, beach. That is to them is much more safer rather than visiting things indoor. And currently, even within the current condition, also there's also limitation for us to do activities indoor. So I think there are 3 things that I identify that is happening in terms of travel. I think post COVID situation.
Thank you, Eddy. I think me too. I mean, I will be traveling solo or in smaller groups for a while. Eddy, I also would like to ask you, we don't know when the next pandemic will happen again, knock on wood. How can we make tourism more resilient so that we don't suffer the same hardships in the future?
I think we can also, even now new variant is always pop up. New variant from after Delta, then there is new, then there is a variant that really contagious. And even now they said COVID now can fly. So I said so many information that we have already. So in terms of new pandemic, I think we have to be really ready. And currently, what we are having right now is really a learning point on how we have to be really survive. Again, I think I may use in my case in the airline industry, for example. Airline cannot solely depend on passenger now. We have to be really expand or diversify our business to also cover other things, like for example, cargo or logistics. Because once you have a limit to travel, then people start to buy anything online. Shipping, logistics are becoming important, and I think that would be similar situation that would take place even in case because bigger pandemic coming up, which I hope it's not happen. But I think that will be things that we are looking at. So we have to really diversify. And personally, also for the person that are experiencing COVID right now, especially in the industry, they have to have other alternate of expertise or skill, because solely depend on tourism alone, it will not guarantee that they will survive. They have to be maybe having knowledge or skill on entrepreneurship, or they have to have skill on maybe financial, on the other thing, which could ensure that they will survive within that situation. So I think that those two that I could highlight at this stage. Maybe Jens and Pak Zakaria has other things that could add. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, Zakaria, you are in the tourism ministry. How will you able to be to make the industry more resilient, so that we don't suffer loss of jobs of tourism workers?
Yeah, as we talk about the life cycle of this tourism industry, it involves so many people of many levels and aspects. We really want to first is to gain the confidence of traveling by telling people that, okay, see, look, Langkawi is fine and everything is open, and we must do a lot of promotions to make people aware of these things that you can do to bring your family out, because some people are still afraid to travel, but majority are ready, because the moment Langkawi is open, people really look forward to be there. So now when more destination is open, we have to, while we try to promote and encourage products to be presented to the public and to make the public experience tourism, we must always keep on reminding them, safe tourism, safe travel, the normal norms, the new norms, please take care. So if we start inculcating that thing in that new culture in them, I think we should start believing that this is the new way to live, which means you can still go around, you can still enjoy yourself, but always remember, take care of yourself, because if you love yourself, you love people around you. Don't be naughty, don't try to forget about things like that. That's why sometimes we encourage them to use travel agents, because one of their role is to remind them about the social distancing, about this sanitizing, about face mask, because some people forget. But now I think most Malaysian are already knowing that these are the tips of the rules of life. Like sometimes you're now about to start the sky engine, oh, my mask, if you run away and take the, that's part of the accessories in you. Last time you're like laughing to see people wearing mask, you go and try to be a doctor or what, but no. Now it's so normal. So if you even start your car somewhere, you have to go back home and make sure that you cannot leave your house without a mask. So it is a culture now.
Mm-hmm. Jens, this is right your alley with the pillars that you mentioned before. How can we make tourism more resilient?
Well, I think resilience is created through partnerships and in inclusivity. So I mean, I think from our standpoint, we created various initiatives like our Experience Mekong collection that I mentioned, and other ones where we look to really engage the small businesses and the communities, but also startups, entrepreneurs, together with existing larger businesses and the public sector. So I think that's when you create resilience. I do agree with Eddy on upskilling and reskilling. I think that's important. And also I think it's important not just to be ready for a pandemic that may hit so that people are not suddenly unemployed, but also I think there will be a shift in skills that will be required. So I think that whole process in terms of digital transformation, I think, is critical. But, I still believe it really comes down to making sure that, residents, communities, small businesses, everyone is engaged in that process, and then everyone has a stake in it. And I think that what makes a resilient community and a resilient destination.
Right, spot on answers from our speakers. As you can see, travel reporting, it has so many sides, it has so many angles. I would like to thank the speakers for those informative sessions. There are so many interesting points raised. My notes are full. I will be pitching some of these on Monday. FYI, the recording will be available later, so you can go back to it for reference and story ideas. So I guess that's it for us. I will hand over the baton back to Danny.
Okay. Hey, I think there's still a number of questions. I loathe to let our experts go without answering them because it's so exciting, so interesting, the questions that have been asked and the answers as well. So were there any more questions, Adib? I think there were, right?
I think
Yes,
I've
there are-
already
yes.
asked some of it.
Some more are just coming in. Let me
Okay.
just give you a minute. Sorry, because it's quite a bit. This has been quite interesting. A lot of people are very
I
interested.
know.
Okay, just one moment. Give me one moment.
I want to ask a question actually. So especially to Zakaria and by extension to the rest, how are the governments working on this on the government-to-government level? I know the ASEAN initiative from before that's obviously been derailed by COVID-19. Can I have you guys comment on that, on the government-to-government basis, the kind of initiative they should be taking?
There has been talks and discussions between governments of different levels, but of course, both sides normally, while they want to open borders, they are concerned about what's happening on the safety part for their people and for this country and so on. That's why these are the only two tug of war, that whether it is safe for us to collaborate or we wait or things like that. But if for Malaysia, we have the immigrations, the foreign affairs, and the tourism ministry sitting together and talking with the other countries on when can we open. But whatever it is, we always look forward to open as soon as possible because it is so good for people, for everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Any comments from Eddy or Jens?
I think for me, frankly, in terms of ASEAN as a group, there is not yet things that come up concretely so far in terms of how the engagement would be. In a simple case, for example, when we talk about the health application, for example, in Malaysia, you have My Sejahtera. And in my country, in Indonesia, we have Peduli Lindungi. In Thailand, they have what they call as Moprom, for example. That requirement is still being put individually as a country. And it poses a risk for us to really can support or facilitate the international travel. Because can you imagine that if, say, for example, people coming to this part of the region want to go to more than 2 countries, so they have to install this application. That's one. Second, a simple case like vaccine certificate. Vaccine certificate now, if you are outside traveler, need to be registered properly into the system. And it needs, at least for Indonesia, I think 5 days or a week. So you can imagine, just to guarantee that you have been vaccinated, it needs to have 1 week for you to be registered. Why it is important? A simple case. In Indonesia now, if you want to go to shopping mall, I think it's in many countries, you want to go to a shopping mall, you want to go to sport, you have to scan your application. And if your application is not Indonesian application, then you will not recognize. Then you will not be entitled to go in. So simply as that. So they have to be really talking together to all these different applications. When I spoke with one of the operator, which mostly government, I checked whether they have already talked with other countries, for example. And unfortunately, they have not really talked with their counterpart in other countries.
Yeah.
I think there's still a big issue on that. While, yeah, I think a lot of things will depend on this because, yeah, of course, different reaction from different government is creating all of this. So I think this kind of simple issue need to be really resolved on how we can really bridge that situation. And at the same time, when we ask, can we have somebody at the regional, like for example, in European Union, they have youth health, digital health pass. It's one, and everyone can use that. But in here in ASEAN, I think there is no such thing. Because when I spoke with one operator, oh, it cannot be done like that by Eddy, because it creates a cross-border data privacy, which we are not allowed to share with other part outside the country. So I think that kind of issue is still happening. So you can imagine how this situation is. So now I'm trying as a part of an association. So I try to create, why don't we have a meeting all together? So you can have identification, what required from you, what required from them, and what will be the possible option that we can have. I think that's one thing that we can do as an association. And we will not, I've been criticized by some people that, why don't you wait for ASEAN? I said, it will be too long for us to wait for whole ASEAN. We just start with whoever ready, then it can be a precedent for us and everyone, and other can follow later once they are ready. I think that's our approach.
Yeah, that's precisely it. The conversation needs to get started because it takes time to get consensus. Jens, any comment from you?
No, I don't think anything really to add. I mean, obviously, we work with 6 governments, and everyone is obviously looking to see how they can collaborate. But I think, as he said, I mean, it takes a long time then for the governments to really drive that, because there are bilateral relationships, there are politics involved and all of that. So I think Eddy's approach, I agree, is the right one.
Yeah, that's just pragmatic, isn't it? Kristin, I hand it back to you. I think there's some more. Yeah.
Very quickly, there is a question from Cesar of Tempo from Indonesia. Before the booming of Delta variant in Indonesia, Indonesian government insists to opening some tourist destinations such as Bali. One of the programs prepared by the government is work from Bali and vaccination tourism. But there are some debate about the policy. People are worried about the spread of the virus. What do the panelists think about that? I think, Eddy, could we start with you since you are in Indonesia?
I think I think correct. There was a program made by government to encourage people, because everyone cannot go to office. Everyone go work from home. So rather than for you to work in your real home, why don't we have some encourage you to stay in Bali or in other destination and stay there for long, which I think many of my friends also doing that even up to now. They stay in Bali for months because the rent, villa rent in Bali is now it's quite cheap. So they can stay for long in Bali without having any hesitance. But again, I think in terms of that measure, it helps for certain industry and certain people for sure. Of course, it is not a massive movement. It's really a scattered movement. And at the same time, within Bali itself, there is restriction for people to travel outside. So I think the measure is helping the industry in some part, but at the same time, there's also a measure to really limit the spread of that pandemic in Bali. Although I admit that in Bali, after that Delta variant, the case is going up. But I was told that the case is going up because of the religious event in Bali, where people try to gather, going to temple together. I think that's mostly the cases, not because of tourists going out. So I think that's my response.
Jens, anything to add? I mean, Thailand also one of the prime destinations for digital nomads, and they started this workcation scheme as well. So do you think that it will spread the virus, this type of policy?
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to how people react you know, if they adhere to the policies, it's like everything. But I think if the right measurements are in place, I think it can be very powerful, right? I mean, I think the first country that actually implemented such a program was Barbados. So Barbados implemented the welcome stamp program. And I think you pay around $2,000. You can bring your family and you stay for a year. So, I mean, it was very popular for people from the UK and from the US. I mean, as you know, I mean, UK is a prime source market for Barbados, also US and Canada. So, you know, Canada is cold, you know, UK is cold, parts of the US are cold. And, you know, so it's a nice place to just, you know, spend a year. And now actually that program is being even extended because, you know, what they have learned is, well, you know, people, it's obviously lower footprint. People do spend money and they don't take a local resident's job, you know, so I mean, there are certain requirements to that. And I think that other countries have also emulated that. I mean, Malta just, I think last week came up with their version, and there's Croatia and there's other countries that have done that. But I think, as you mentioned, Thailand, I mean, what's actually interesting with Thailand is there is a Koh Phangan. Koh Phangan is obviously famous for the full moon party. And I think the 3+ weeks when there is no full moon party, I'm talking obviously pre-COVID, the island is empty. And still they were able, and it's a beautiful island. I mean, it's off Samui, but it's a great deal. You know, it's beautiful, probably one of the more beautiful islands in Thailand. But you know, obviously, full moon party, that's extreme. And you know, if you like taking drugs and drinking hard and partying all night, I mean, that's perfect. But the other 3 weeks, basically, the hotels are empty. So they actually positioned themselves as a digital nomad hub, and so influencers were there. They open co-working spaces, and I think the piece around that, the learning is it's not just to open up and say like, okay, yeah, digital nomads can come or whatever, let's say, community group, but you need to build then a community to create a sense of belonging, to build infrastructure around it, right? So I mean, if you're looking to bring in influencers. Or digital nomads, bloggers, and so on, you know, you want to have co-working spaces. If you want to have more retired people, you need to have infrastructure for that, and so on. So but it's, I think, a very interesting strategy, especially now. And then if the measurements in place, I think they act just like residents, and they're spending money. So I think it's a brilliant approach to bring money in, not taking a job away from a local person. But yet also create some more sustainable tourism approaches, because these people obviously, they want to explore also the local culture and want to be embedded in that. So I think it's great.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Zakaria? What do you think of work from Bali, and will there be a work from Langkawi, I mean?
I think this is an amazing idea. It's a great idea that that will make people feel so much better when the price is low, and you can also, I mean, it is from both sides. While we create the demand, but in the low demand, and you also have opportunity of taking vacations or doing your work at a very lower price. But to me, this thing will work. I think in the earlier stage, the challenge will be the level of confidence, because at that time, there's not many people who are fully vaccinated. So like you will feel like, oh, maybe the person that come is not fully vaccinated. I mean, when it was introduced the first time, so people around you are not fully vaccinated. But now, when so many people are fully vaccinated, the level of confidence is high. I think there will be so much takers, because the idea is great. But except maybe now when people are starting to travel and borders are open, it could be more pricey than before. But at that time when it was newly introduced, you have to balance up between cheap but may not be that safe, that kind of thing. But in conclusion, I say it's a very good idea. You work from home in a nice resort, nice ambience with, you know, so much nature around you, work done, and you are happy. You are not allowed to move too much, but you're not allowed too much in a resort. I don't mind as well. Thank
Yeah,
you.
don't we all? We
That's
don't
right.
mind. We don't
Please
mind
present
working
me in a
resort.
resort. Yeah.
Okay. So we already a bit over time. Danny,
Yeah.
I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kristin. What a great discussion, isn't it, today? Really enjoyed Zakaria, Eddy, Jens, and Kristin. You guys really whipped up the storm with that one. And I think I've already got many thank you notes from the participants saying that they really enjoyed the session and got something from it. So thanks again, everybody. I would like to make some announcements here. As you guys might know, this is a series of 5 master classes, and today is the 3rd. The next one is coming up on the 9th of October, and that will be on maritime security. So maritime security is obviously a subject that may not be of interest for everybody, you know, and that would become the masterclass would be an ideal opportunity for one to catch up on that and find out what's happening with that particular topic, right? That's happening on the 9th of October, same time on Saturday. Our website is now up, so seafore.org, SEAFORE.org, where you can get more information on the master classes. We have recorded this particular session, and the recording will be ready in 2-3 days time. So for those of you who wants the recording, I know some would, because you want to revisit what the speakers have said. We also would make the transcripts available as soon as we can, iron out all the glitches in the transcripts. For those of you who wants it quite soon, just write me directly. I think you already know our email address. You can just write to danny.yong@malaysiakini.com. And that's where you can get me. If not, just go to seafore.org to get more information on the next 2 master classes as well. Our email address will be in there as well. So finally, one last thing, this is something we do for our funders and our sponsors. There's a survey that's in the chat for attendees. Please try to fill up the survey for us. Yeah, we want our sponsors to continue to sponsor this sort of event so that we have more of this great discussions. Yeah, I can give you 2-3 minutes to do this. And speakers, thank you. If you want to leave, you can go too. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Eddy, for staying.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to organizers as well.
You.
Bye-bye. Take care.
All right, take care. You too.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.